Miller Plaza, New York City. No, just kidding. No, we're recording and streaming. I think we'll have a few folks join us later, so I'll just call off the folks that are here with us this evening. The Bond Committee, Judy Deller, Amanda Harper, Rhonda Nyberg, Clayton Ray, Rick Russell, Adele Torres, and Thomas Weaver. So tonight's agenda is streets. We'll talk about streets, sidewalks, and parks projects, and then I think we'll have some follow-up from the animal shelter discussion and some of the site visits y'all took part in. And with that, I will introduce Trenton Tidwell, who is our city engineer.
Thank you, Gabe. How are we looking, Pedro? So I'm mainly going to talk through this PowerPoint that I sent out last week, but I just want to explain the three things I put on your desk real quick. So on the top is a hard copy of the slides, just so that you can take notes and look through it. The second map here, I'll just show it to everyone, is an overall map. What I've done is we've traced over the projects, the potential projects we're going to talk about, and numbered them. So this you could just maybe have on the side if you want to keep track of which side of town it's on or relatively where it is. So hopefully this will just help keep track of kind of what we're talking about and where we're talking about it. And then the last three are the prettiest ones. You can tell they're parks because they're pretty. Those are the last three exhibits. So we'll probably open those up last when we talk about parks. If you want to set those to the side. And by the way, with me, we have Mason Schott, Emma Kirkendall, who've helped with the streets and sidewalks, and then Laura Presley, who helped with the parks. So if I get stumped, I'm going to look at them to help me answer questions. Okay, let's see if this works. There we go. All right, so like Gabe said, we're going to talk about streets, sidewalks, and parks. We're going to go through kind of some ongoing projects that are happening in each of those buckets, just so you have a context of what's happening right now in the city. We're going to talk briefly about the philosophy of funding maintenance projects versus CIP projects, and then we'll talk through a list of potential bond projects for your consideration that have been selected either by staff, our team, and or the Parks Board. So first we'll start with the ongoing street projects. On the top left of each slide, if this was funded by the previous bond program, the 2021 bond program, I just put that logo there just so it's easy to remember that that's where this funding came from. So we'll just roll through a handful of these. Feel free to chime in and ask questions at any point. So Knowles was a big priority for the last bond program, the entirety of Knowles, from Bailey Boswell all the way down to Longhorn. Knowles Phase 1 was the first project we took to construction, and it included the traffic signal at Bailey Boswell and also the roundabout at W.J. Bowes. It is complete as of last summer, and the southern limit of that stretch went down to the north end of Willow Creek Park. The project that's under construction right now that was also funded from the bond program is Knowles Drive Phase 2 and 3. So this goes from Knowles Phase 1, which is the north end of the park, all the way down to Longhorn. This will include a roundabout at McElroy and also a traffic signal at Longhorn. We're hoping that this construction of the south side that's under construction right now will wrap up in a couple months. And then the final piece, which would be the roundabout and the culvert crossing on McElroy, will be the last missing piece. It should be finished before school starts next year in August. I forgot my notes. 1 second. This summer in June, we actually met with the council to reprioritize the remaining bond funds. And one of the projects that wasn't originally on the list but got added was North Old Decatur. So the limits of this project are from Bailey Boswell up to the city limits. And we'll reconstruct this from the 2-lane with roadside ditches that it is now to a 3-lane section with internal storm drain and sidewalks on both sides. We're working on final design for that right now, and our goal is to start construction either late summer or fall of next year. But that one is fully funded, design and construction.
Is your mic on?
I believe so. I can talk louder if you like. Yes, ma'am. The next project that was in the 2021 bond program is McRoy Phase 3. This project goes from from Knowles Drive on the west to Saginaw Boulevard on the east. We got kicked off on final design for this in the summer, and we will be actually submitting 60% design this month. So the goal is to start construction for this in early 2026, but design and construction is both funded for McRoy Phase 3. One of the projects that got added to the list from our council meeting in June is McRoy Phase 2A. You'll see this on your overall map exhibit as it's labeled number 1. Because the last bond program funded the design, but it did not fund the construction. So the limits of this project are from Saginaw Boulevard over to Spring Hollow, which includes all of the railroad crossings, which obviously are a big headache for people driving through there. It also includes the traffic signal approaches at the boulevard on the west side. So once again, just to emphasize, this was, the design for this project was funded, or is funded. We're under contract for that. However, the construction does not have funding at this point. Any questions on that?
It does include the railroad track construction?
Yes, sir.
Not just up to it?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the panels would be replaced, all of the gates and mast arms, all of that.
I thought the railroad paid for all that.
So we pay for all of that, but then they would maintain it, yes. So all of that is included in the project.
So what do they plan on doing here? Like, what is?
What would the improvements be?
I'm sorry?
What would the improvements be?
Correct.
Specifically as you head westbound or at the approach, is that what you're asking? So right now I believe it's 2 lanes that head westbound and 2 lanes that head eastbound. I'm talking more on the east side of the tracks. So we're still finalizing some of those elements because this design is headed towards 60 but not there. But our initial results of our traffic analysis say that we would add an additional lane headed westbound. You can kind of see that on the top graphic. There's a left turn lane that's separated, a separate through lane, and a separate right lane. That's one of the improvements. Also, we're strongly pushing to have sidewalk connections through there, which we don't really have at Bailey Boswell or Longhorn or any of our other connections, but that would be another improvement that we're pushing to have. So all those would require new railroad panels and railroad equipment. And so this is a bigger discussion about quiet zones that we may not get into tonight, but we would set this up to be quiet zone eligible. Now, whether we pursue a quiet zone, we would look for direction from staff and council for that, but those types of improvements include like a raised median between the westbound traffic and the eastbound traffic, and then those upgraded mast arms like I discussed.
For the North Decatur design, how much was that?
Oh, can I get my laptop real quick?
Okay.
I have it pulled up. This is what I was on paper we may have ready to go. Just the design, Rick?
Yes, and from the bond money alone.
Okay, well, from the bond money alone, the design was $130,000.
Is McRoy Phase 3 similar?
The amount of the design? No, it'd be significantly more. And to add more context to North Old Decatur, it wasn't solely funded by the bond program. The remaining delta between design and construction was funded. So I would, about half of the project from Old Decatur was funded. On McRoy Phase 3, is that what you asked?
Yes. Just the bond money.
Just the bond money for just the design,
Yes,
it
please.
was 1.2 million approximately.
And that's all that's been done is design, right? Because the construction hadn't started.
Correct. But that includes all of the necessary funds to have us facilitate the project through construction and bidding as well.
Okay, and on McElroy Phase 2A?
That one is 1.1 million.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
And all these,
Yeah, some of the other funds for North Old Decatur, just for context, was Tarrant County provided, I believe, around 500,000, 450,000. And then there was also developer funds, like impact fee funds that were collected.
this is all concrete, not asphalt.
All of the CIP streets, we will talk about our concrete. But yes, North Old Decatur, which is a project that's already funded, is concrete.
And McElroy?
And all of the macro projects that are proposing are concrete, yes, sir.
And I'm sorry, does everybody know what CIP is?
So yeah, we can talk about that now, I guess. We have kind of two buckets of roadway projects. Yeah, thank you. So CIP is the capital improvement plan. We update that every year. And those are streets that are kind of the major collectors and arterials. And typically, when we're reconstructing those, we're adding perhaps capacity by adding additional lanes or adding new sidewalks. And then the other bucket that I'll touch on tonight is also the maintenance roadway projects. And usually those, we're looking at just repairing the condition of the road. And those may be asphalt. Those would be the only asphalt streets we have listed. But they're not necessarily adding capacity or adding new sidewalks. It's more focused on pavement condition and utilities. Okay, so I believe I got through all of these, and that will lead us, oh no, there's one more, I apologize. So this one was not funded from the 2021 bond program. The current, I'll say tentative plan was that this was going to be included in the development that was under design for McRoy Phase 1. So this is the very east portion, and on your map, this would fill the gap between the number 2 segment to 156. So basically Lavon to Blue Mound or 156. So this would fill that final gap of McRoy Phase 1, and it's actually a realignment. And so I just have it on here as projects in the works because it was currently under design with the developer. I will just mention that this is dependent upon the developer. So unlike the previous projects which have bond funding or regular city budgets applied to them that are more sure, this one's dependent on the developer following through with his development or their development.
And there's no update on a date yet?
I don't have an update. Do you?
They don't have finalized civils, so they're planning, but part of the hiccup, so we're calling this macro road, but it's essentially, Western Center would be extended.
Right.
And so the signalized intersection has to go through TxDOT, which is quite a lengthy process. For some developer, because they're required to install this fully, their process.
So I want to make sure that I completely understand it. If we get a developer,
There it is, yeah.
and if they agree to develop it, they will pay Kimley Horn to do this design?
We're not involved in this. I'm just showing it, as information.
Ah, okay.
Or I would say, we're involved by helping facilitate reviews of the plans. But
Of their plans?
yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So speaking microphone. Give you an example, Basswood. So Basswood was completed, the last phase to Bailey Boswell, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now. the trigger there is our subdivision ordinance requires public infrastructure to be installed at the developer's cost.
Okay.
So can't tell you when it's going to happen, but the developer will hire an engineer, submit plans. Kimley Horn will verify that it meets our requirements, and then we'll accept them. They'll
Okay.
construct and.
Perfect, that's great.
Okay, I think, yes, so the next few projects are potential bond projects. So we're going to talk through the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan first, and then I'll talk about a couple of maintenance projects. So these, again, are, if you're wanting to follow on your map or your slideshow, these are in order. So we'll go 1 through 7 on the map. So first one we're going to start with is McElroy Phase 2A that we just talked about, which was from Main Street or the Boulevard or Business 287, however you want to call it, to Spring Hollow. Something else I'm going to have on all of these slides is a PCI rating, which is a Pavement Condition Index, which is a scale of the condition of the road from 0 to 100. So we worked with staff and we did an inventory of all the roads, or we hired it out to a company that specializes in that. And they collected the condition of all the roadways in Saginaw approximately 2 or 3 years ago. And so these ratings are from that date, and then every 5 years or so, Saginaw will get new data, and we use that information to help craft the sump program, the street utility maintenance program, and the street rehab program.
Is PCI, what's the scale?
0 to 100.
And this is the current PCI?
0 to 100?
Oh, and you're seeing 35?
Yeah.
So, yeah. We have a couple streets that are up near 80 or so,
Okay,
but a lot of the ones that we are, I mean, obviously, they're making the list because they're pretty low. So overall, the city was at about, was in the high 60s. Is that right? I think it was around 67 or 68. And the council, expressed that they wanted to either maintain that or try to get it up to 70 was the goal, which is about average for most cities. What'd you say, Thomas?
I was about to say, the 35 is its current condition or where it's gonna end up after all this?
35 would have been where it was 2 to 3 years ago when we collected the data.
What is involved? What are the specifics that give you the ratings?
So how they actually collect it, they use a van with its radar detectors that are on the back. So they'll scan every single road, and then they use computers to analyze like the number of cracks, the type of cracks, and the severity of cracking. And so using all of that, it helps them compile that information.
So do they also use a traffic study?
Not for the condition indexing, but we do take that into account when planning the maintenance program of like which streets have the higher volumes and give priority to those.
What about the construction materials? Because this particular area is heavy industrial.
So are you saying, well, so that wouldn't factor into the PCI necessarily, but we do always do a geotech analysis for every roadway that's going to be designed, and we require that from developers as well who are designing roads. And so that geotech analysis will analyze the existing subgrade, the dirt or clay underneath, and then it also requires that it uses traffic counts to project the number, we call it number of ESALs, to create a pavement life that would last 30 years.
And traffic types?
Yes, not like types of trucks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's required for every roadway design.
Great.
So that's, the PCI will be on every road that we go through. It's important information for sure. We want you to have that, but not necessarily, we don't necessarily start from the worst to the highest. And I'll talk a little more about that kind of theory after I get done with the CIP streets. So if you were to select this portion of the road, which, you know, I think it's a high priority to council at the moment, is the design, or, sorry, the remaining construction funds that would be needed would be approximately 9.5 million. 9.5 million. And that would include all of the necessary railroad coordination, permitting, inspection, it's an estimate for any easements we might need, anything like that. I will say right off the bat that because we don't necessarily know which streets will go in what order, we don't typically apply an inflation factor to these because, you know, like industrial phase 2 has been on the list for quite a while. And you know, it's hard to predict if it's going to be built in 10 years, 15 years. And so all of these numbers don't include that. And I don't know, Gabe or Lee, who may be applying that. I know Dolph did it last time. But that would be something to kind of keep in mind as y'all do this, that not all the roads or parks would all go immediately. It may be in the 5th year of the issued funds, so you wouldn't work that inflation in.
So, and by the way, this is great material, thank you. So for $9.5 million, how long can the taxpayers expect that road to be okay before we spend another $9.5 million?
The design life for the pavement would be 30. We would expect it to exceed that. But that would be the minimum expectation. So, and I will say, we paid particular attention to the trucks whenever we were looking at the cost estimates for phase 2 and phase 3, which is on the west side of the boulevard. And during our conceptual design, we went ahead and did a geotech analysis and gave them the traffic counts with truck data. And the sections for east of the tracks, or east of 287 and west of 287, were significantly different because of the trucks.
Sure.
And so,
And industrial as well,
right.
yeah. So, Gabe, thinking way, way outside the box. Do cities have any recourse with the companies that are using these roads to get some type of impact fee analysis or, you know, benefits from it? Or we're out of luck, we just got to keep repairing them?
Yeah, I mean, so it's, as you've seen, maintenance, construction, roadways, tremendously expensive. In this corridor, you mentioned it's heavy industry, so these are our job-producing areas and a lot of commerce, which is why they get beaten up. There are, for new developments, some cities adopt roadway impact fees for new developments, so you pay money up front to fund the infrastructure and then knowing that it'll need to be replaced, but.
Would that be like for a new industrial park or something?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
But to come back now.
Right, yeah,
You
gotcha.
know, a replacement project. Now, I will say, maybe Trent was gonna mention it, but the city council, if you go over this roadway now, which when things become personal, they become important. So I'm a east side guy and I come on McElroy a lot. It's very rough. So the city council has said, and in fact, Randy or maybe Jared has even spoke with them, but we want to temporarily resurface this, overlay it so that it'll hold up a couple years before the design process, because it's like 2 years, right, with the railroads. It's a very long design process because of coordination of the railroads. So the good news is we're planning on using some maintenance funds to overlay that section between Saginaw Boulevard and this general area to just kind of extend it before, you know, we could get potentially voters to approve, because it's very rough.
So just one, and something you said,
Right.
the money for the design though, if this committee decided this is important, we want to do it, the money for the design now and going forward has already been paid for.
Correct. So
Okay, good.
the city council, what they did essentially back in June is they said that the west section of McElroy was less priority based on condition, because west of Knowles. Yeah, west McElroy, west of Knowles. It's in
Okay,
better condition.
gotcha.
And that they wanted to shift attention in design. And then keeping in mind that the design for this project, because of the railroads, is like a two plus years, so.
Good, thank you.
But the construction's not funded.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I will go to the next roadway project. This one is what we call McElroy Phase 2B. So as you can tell, we split what was previously known as McElroy Phase 2 into 2A and 2B. That was in order to get a better sized chunk, I would say, so that we could focus on that railroad section from the boulevard to Spring Hollow. But this would be from Spring Hollow to Lavon. The PCI rating of it is 64. There was a, kind of in the same vein that Gabe was just talking about, there was a pulverize and overlay that occurred with the county, I believe that was 2 or 3 years ago. And so that's why this pavement condition is in slightly better shape than the rest of McElroy, although I did find something severe out there when I went to go take
That's
pictures.
actually west of Lavon towards Blue Mountain.
That's west of Lavon,
Yes.
looking in the other direction? Okay. I may have got my pictures mixed up.
So from everything shown is that we're not planning on doing any maintenance on that section of the street, which needs it more so than Spring Hollow to Lavon.
Yeah, it's in worse condition for sure. And so it's a fair point that right now, you know, I don't know if it's the bird in the hand or the opportunity that lies in front of the city is to take the developer up on leading the charge on that roadway east of Lavon. However, it's not a sure thing.
But the time frame on that,
Right, is not a guarantee, right, at all.
because 2 years ago, when they redid from Spring Hollow to Lavon, they did not do from Lavon to Blue Mountain.
Correct. Because it was
so-
anticipated to be,
It's still waiting, and it's worse.
yes, certainly. It's a fair point, and if, go ahead, Gabe.
You're right, and at the time, there was discussion that the developer that would do the Western Center extension would also improve that portion of the roadway. We have a financing mechanism called the TERS, the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone. This roadway was included in the TERS boundary, so it would be eligible. So we're accruing funds. Some of that comes from the county and TCC, which we wouldn't normally have. So that may be a conversation with the city council in the future to fund that.
Yeah,
That
I just
gap.
don't want the misunderstanding of this photo is not included in what we're voting for bonds money for.
Yeah, I got it, yeah. And it definitely needs, to your point, it definitely needs attention at some point in the future.
Because it needs it more than Spring Hollow to Lavon.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I do understand waiting for the developer.
Right.
But it comes to a point, well, how bad are we let the road get before a developer comes in to fix it for us?
I understand, yeah. Yep.
And I will say too, I don't think Saginaw would get to a point where they reconstruct east of Lavon completely, because that's not the master thoroughfare plan alignment. The alignment is to realign. So there has been discussions that if that development completely stalls out, it would be very high on the list to work with the county to pulverize and overlay, similar to what happened between Spring Hollow and Lavon, but we haven't gotten there yet. But I apologize, you're right, that picture is looking east, and it should have been, or is looking east, it should have been looking west. I'll blame Gabe. Gabe pulled me aside at that intersection, and then he got me honked at. That's true. He really was there. I think that this is last week. So from now on, these numbers that you will see at the bottom, the 10.8 million includes all of the design, all of the construction, the geotech analysis, Rick, like you were asking about, the survey, all of it. So that is a all-in number except for inflation. Okay, the west portion of McElroy, the very west that Gabe was just mentioning, we call it Phase 4. So it is from, it used to be from Knowles all the way to Old Decatur. Since that Knowles project included the culvert extension, the creek crossing that floods often, I'm going to rename it to Old Decatur to Willow Creek Park. This section, the PCI is an 81. It's actually in pretty decent shape. with the development that just came in right there, we'll see where it trends when we re-survey all the roads. This cost of this project is $7 million.
Is it extending that road or widening that road?
Yeah, so it would be a 4-lane divided in the ultimate section. And there are sidewalks on the north side of that road that are in pretty good shape, but this project would install sidewalks on the south side. Okay, so we'll jump now to industrial. Industrial as a whole kind of ranges from the Boulevard to 156 or Blue Mound, but we have it split into 2 separate phases. So the first phase is from the railroad tracks to Blue Mound. This street is existing concrete and one of the worst concrete streets we have because of the heavy truck traffic. So its PCI rating is a 38 and its cost is $5.2 million. Yes. This one? Okay, thank you. Jared was saying that this specific location, they have contracted a contractor to repair this panel, concrete, or these concrete panels right here.
Oh, in the picture.
But what,
I mean, I tried to find the worst spots when I was out there.
but what about where they have,
Tried to really sell it.
Is that right there, the turn in,
I think I'm
is that
just
Fuel City or?
on the
is
west
that-
side of Fuel City.
that's west of Fuel
Oh,
City?
yeah.
Yeah.
At Fuel City, they have the metal plates out there. So this would be remove those. Is it removing and replacing the concrete, or is it asphalt over the concrete?
It's proposed concrete. We'll remove all of the old concrete, restabilize the subgrade, and then put new concrete. Yep. Yeah. So on the very east side of this project, there is another project that's ongoing that is also led by a developer, but Saginaw has a large role in it as well. It's actually in the process. We started relocating utilities. It would reconstruct the intersection of Industrial and 156. And the western limits of it, Fuel City is the developer that kind of jump-started the project. Obviously are along the Fuel City frontage. So this project, although I simply name it Blue Mound to Railroad to Blue Mound, would actually tie into their project. And I think so, yeah, about 600 feet. But it reconstructs the entire intersection of 156 and Industrial.
On the Saginaw side.
Actually, it's both sides.
All of the intersection, my understanding is that the Fort Worth limits are the eastern right-of-way. But if y'all have that memorized differently, I'd be very impressed. I might be wrong. But I think all of that's Saginaw. And then phase 2 of Industrial is the west side, kind of mirrored from here. So this would be from the railroad. Similarly, I named it to Ardent Mills because from Ardent Mills to the boulevard, that has already been reconstructed to concrete. And that is actually one of the quiet zones that is in place in Saginaw. The PCI of this is 55. And the total price for this would be $4.6 million to go back with concrete. I'm sorry, Jared. I didn't mean to find all the worst spots. I feel like Jared's hating me right now. Okay, and we got a couple more.
I'm scared, I'm sorry, Jerry, could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Jared Kersey, I'm the Assistant Public Works Director.
Thank you. You work for Randy?
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so Basswood, I have this split into 2, but this is a project that recently got added into the CIP plan, kind of as Bailey Boswell rolled off. So currently Basswood is a 6-lane divided from High Country South, and a 4-lane divided from High Country North to Bailey Boswell. And we've had the intersections on there on the CIP plan as intersection improvements. So we have not yet determined if we would want to do a roundabout or a signal there. But if we were to reconstruct both of those, we are estimating $4.1 million for design and construction.
For either a signal or a roundabout?
Just to be honest with you, we ran both costs, and this intersection, it would be more costly to do roundabouts, but we priced it at a spot where the staff and the traffic study would have the flexibility to choose the safest option.
So would it be a single lane roundabout?
I think and this will get into the next slide, it was a hybrid, actually. It was a 2 lanes in the north and south and a 1 lane in the east and west. And if it was a traffic signal, we may also drop lanes at the intersections. And actually, I'll just jump over there. So another topic of discussion for this corridor is reducing the section from High Country South from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. So we've had issues that have been brought up to council about speeding, running the 4-way stops, the lack of sidewalks, and there's poor pavement condition in the medians especially, but a lot of that concrete just hasn't. There was construction flaws, I think, or maybe it's the trees that some of the panels are separating. So there's been discussion of reducing it to 4 lanes that will hopefully help, the ability to lower speeds, add wider sidewalks, perhaps maybe even bike lanes, and then just slow that whole corridor down.
Does this include adding a sidewalk on the east side?
I have that separated. It is not included in this one. I
Okay.
have that as a separate in my sidewalk projects.
So I'm not a civil engineer. Why is it 3.3 million?
I've asked that. I have the detailed OPCs, but when I did this one, I remember thinking this is ridiculous. But what we ended up doing was we took, for this one I believe, was we removed the inside lane, and then what you end up having to do is reconstruct all the left turn lanes and add in all the median crossovers. So it feels high, but also it is a longer stretch of road. But I
Could
can
we test
provide-
it with a bucket of paint to paint the lanes?
To paint them, just to keep people off of it?
Yeah.
Randy and I and Gabe, we've actually discussed several different options of maybe we don't actually remove it, but we repurpose it.
Yeah.
Or add maybe a curb between the outside lane and then let that be like a bike lane or shared use path of some sort. We've had some creative ideas. And then this is also a section where we've kind of looked at perhaps seeking grant funding of
Yeah.
using, providing some transportation alternative methods.
So with your expertise, if you reduce it from 6 to 3,
To 4.
yeah, you're right. With your experience, that will tend to reduce the speeding.
I believe so. That is my experience. I also would propose that we do 11-foot lanes. That would also help. So if we were to redo it, it would give us some flexibility to make more tweaks than just reduce the number of lanes.
What are the lanes right now?
They're 12 feet, which is standard, but a lot of cities, like Fort Worth, has gone to 11-foot standard. Even TxDOT allows 11-foot lanes on occasion now.
If we did something other than redesign it, if we used the paint or concrete curbs or something to just kind of redesign what already exists, is there a PCI on this corridor?
There is. I don't know why I don't have it here. Mason has it on his laptop if you want it.
It's pretty
Just
good.
curious.
It's not too bad. The main like pavement flaw in this area are the joints of the concrete, especially the running joints between lanes. That's what's caused some issues. But I know Jared and Randy, we've talked through, because that's what prompted the original discussion of could we go from 6 to 4? They said, would it work capacity-wise? Yes, we looked at the numbers and it would, but that cost never really validated that removal. So we've looked at shaving, grinding some of those flaws out, lifting the pavement. That's not as proven, but the PCI should be probably. Oh, yeah, you said 5 minutes. It's only been 2.
What
Okay.
was it? Oh, Jared, they did shave some of those inside lanes up by the high school, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay.
And it really was very nice. Just a layman's suggestion, have you talked to Fort Worth on the east side of Blue Mountain Road? Because that's 2 lanes, and that's just as bad.
Speeding wise.
Yeah. There are more accidents at the roundabout. Yeah.
Yeah, I got rear-ended there.
Oh, you have it.
But-
I got rear-ended at one of the roundabouts
Yeah.
while I was stopped. I was stopped for a good while. And I didn't see the damage till I got home. The bumper got hitch covered.
So Thomas, the PCI for this was 78
Oh,
to 81. So relatively good condition.
nice.
Okay. So this is where I wanted to talk just a little bit of kind of maintenance funding theory or street funding theory with y'all. So this graph here is used to help explain, where Public Works should really invest their annual dollars. So on the left, which is the y-axis, is the condition of the pavement. So a lot of times you'll see that from 0 to 100 of the PCI, but on this one it says failed to good. And then the x-axis left to right is just time. So in this graphic, normally that time is 20 or 30 years, but it really depends on the design of your pavement. And what this illustrates is that pavement doesn't deteriorate linearly. Those are 2 hard words. It stays steady for the first 10, 15 years, and then it drops off significantly. And I feel like Saginaw's seen that a lot on their residential roads where, our annual budget was really getting us by, but then a lot of our roads that are 20, 30 years old at this point are dropping off significantly. When we did the pavement management program or pavement condition indexing, where we looked at all the roads, council had asked us, what will it take to raise our PCI of the whole city to 70? And our program's able to run that and tell us, and the number was honestly too high, where it wasn't as feasible. And so I think the goal was, let's just do everything we can to not let it go down. Let's not trend downward. And so what Public Works has been doing is mainly investing their dollars at the top call out there that says, you might be able to read it, says $1 for rehabilitation here. So what that is it's more cost-effective maintenance, like crack sealing and overlaying. And so that is what our annual budget currently is mainly going to, is doing this crack sealing projects and doing the overlays. Typically, we stretch those dollars even further by working with the county to use their machines, and the city just pays for materials. The missing piece of that pavement program is the full reconstructs that are required for roads that have gone down the curve significantly already. And so those projects are going to cost more and frankly don't have budget that we can allocate to them regularly or fast enough in the annual budget. So one program, Jared and I have worked on together it's still, at the very early stages of being implemented, is the SUMP program, which is the Street and Utility Maintenance Program. What we're trying to do with that is pair the worst roads with the worst utilities and knock them out at the same time. And so we've created, our first few projects that we want to fund with those But when we're building up the annual budget, it's taking 4 or 5 years to knock out one stretch of road. And what the request was to bring some of these larger rehab projects to the bond committee. So that's a really long-winded explanation to say Opal Street from Longhorn to McRoy is one of our top priorities. We have this scheduled currently in the SUMP program, but we are breaking it out into 2 or 3 phases. Its PCI rating is 30. And so I want to clarify, this cost is actually just for the pavement. So when I was pulling these numbers, I realized today, and I talked to Jared about it, that I had a mistake and that this number was just for the pavement. So what I would like to provide to y'all later this week is a number that includes all of the utilities and all of the pavement, because we don't want to disassociate those projects. I had honestly thought that we had enough money in it's called the enterprise fund, which funds our utility projects, to pay for the utilities. But we spoke with Kim and she told me I was wrong. So I anticipate that the number I'll give you will be between like 2.5 to 3 million for all of the utilities, and it'll include a full reconstruction of the road and then spot repairs for sidewalks and ramps that are necessary, not a full reconstruction.
So that's 2 to 3 million in addition to the 170.
Total, not in addition. So another street that we've looked at that has, that combination of very low PCIs, aging utilities, and then also kind of higher traffic volumes is Park Center. And so this would stretch from Old Decatur to Saginaw Boulevard. And this number as well I have at 1.6, but that's for the roadway and the sidewalks. So similarly, I'll come back later this week with a number that is all-inclusive. And I won't guess the number here because, Jared, I need to look. I think the utilities on this road are larger than the one on Opal, perhaps. So the utilities may be slightly more expensive on this stretch to replace those.
Is this the stretch of Park Center that's had water main issues? Like, or the leaks or?
So we've had some issues through there. There's also, in addition to the water main, there's also two 2-inch water mains that are in the yards that we need to do away with. A few years ago, because of that issue, we had a 36-hour-long job.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And this is
was-
that section?
That was a pretty big ordeal, so that's.
2 2-inch water mains?
Well, yes, in addition, there's also a 16-inch over there, and it goes down to a 10 and an 8 also.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Would this project redo all of that?
Yeah,
As part of the utilities?
Yeah, part of the sub.
Yeah, it'd be utilities, street, and then spot repair for sidewalks.
I know earlier you mentioned you don't have a designated timeline for when each one of these street projects is gonna be happening, but I just wanted to mention going forward in the parks part, we are proposing redoing William Houston Park that is right off this road, so I just wanna make sure that if both of these projects get approved, that we're paying attention to fixing the road possibly after we do the park, so that we don't have those construction trucks coming in there and turn up a new road that we just put in. Just put it in kind of.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, when I had these slides there, I did think this would kind of pair nicely if we redid that park to have, nice roads to a nice park.
Definitely.
But you're right, we could be strategic with our timing of that.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. I have only, I believe, 2 slides for sidewalks, and then we're going to jump to parks. Before I move on, do y'all want to talk about any of the roads or any other roads? We could also, obviously, if you have any roads you'd like to request information on, the PCI or where they stand on the CIP plan or master thoroughfare plan, I can make a list and provide that to y'all.
Is it safe to assume that if we do these projects, they go to 100 PCI, or is that just not feasible?
Yeah, it'd be 100.
It would be 100 to start.
Right.
And through maintenance.
I'd
we
say
try to
even
keep
through
that-
the first 2 years, you could usually assume about 100, because every roadway we bid out and construct, we require the contractor to have a 2-year bond. And if there's any cracked panels or any construction flaws that occur, we have them replace it after the 2 years time period. Not the whole roadway typically, but whichever panel's cracked.
And then our maintenance plan would be to keep those above 70,
Um,
above 50?
So, I mean, concrete is somewhat bulletproof unless you have improper drainage or bad subgrade. So that doesn't require a whole lot of maintenance. But, yeah, going back to, does this go backward to Pedro? No. Oh, yes.
The curvy slide,
The curvy slide,
that one.
yeah, even the new roads, we would like to not neglect those, but perhaps come back with like a crack seal, after maybe 5-10 years. Because you would invest a small amount of money to extend the pavement life rather than wait until it goes kaput and then spend a lot of money.
So Jared, streets like Mockingbird, are those in the normal maintenance routine?
Yes, and that's definitely on our radar.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions before we jump to sidewalks? Okay. So we only have one sidewalk project under design currently. We just finished up, what was the last one we did? Thompson. We also did another portion of Southern, Bluebonnet and Opal recently. A lot of those were funded by two sources. The city had issued $1 million in a CO bond designated towards sidewalks. So we use that as well as leveraging funds we get from Tarrant County for our, they're called CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Program. They're lower income areas. And we get that funding every other year. And so that's typically how we fund sidewalks. But we'll talk today about some larger sidewalk gaps that aren't eligible for that grant funding that may be, considered for the bond. So this Southern Sidewalks design is it not on here? Oh yeah, because it's an ongoing project. It's from Bluebonnet to the shopping center at the Boulevard, which connects to the previous Southern project we did. And that is in design right now. We should be able to advertise that project early next year, probably go to construction early summer. And that is actually fully funded by the Community Development Block Program. Okay, so three gaps that I really wanted to hit on today, which have been brought up either through citizens to council, council to staff, or staff, is Old Decatur. So Old Decatur, there's quite a large gap from Sherwood to Longhorn. On your exhibit, it's the green line 10 on the very left. And so some of those parcels of land aren't fully developed. And so when they were to develop, we would require that developer build those sidewalks. But kind of Clayton, to your point about McRoy, there's no telling when that would actually happen. And then I know Paul, Councilman Paul was saying that this is kind of an area that he thinks is in dire need of these sidewalk improvements. So this was something he's been asking about. So total cost for that would be $1.2 million. The other gap that is surfaced as a priority is Basswood. And so that would be on the north side, I think you said, Rick, north or east, I guess, depending on where you're at, from Blue Mound to Whistle Stop, which is, I think, just near the fire station south of High Country.
Yeah, why wouldn't that go across the utility easement there? And
The
connect-
intention would to go across utility
Oh, okay,
easement. I think
connect
I
to the-
found a near street just to be able to list its
Okay.
limits. So it would connect to that existing sidewalk there. So that street, we've also applied for a safety grant to fund that. I will say, we won't hear back until next summer for that grant. But that was the HSIP program, Highway Safety Improvement Program, which counterintuitively, it doesn't get used on any highways. It gets used on smaller streets and sidewalks.
Any plans to put a sidewalk on the south side of Basswood by the high school?
Oh, okay, because most of the south side does have sidewalk.
Right
but
up
that
until
last
the- yeah,
stretch,
yeah.
from,
It's
Grand
interesting, they put in
Central-
all the crossings for Blue Mound and Basswood, and there's no sidewalk for the
Right.
crossings.
so council had asked me in Public Works to approach the Cleet Welch with
School district.
the school district about funding that. And we met in person, presented the opportunity, you may call it, to fund that, and he agreed to fund it.
Oh, good.
I will say that was probably 6 months ago, and so I think I followed up a few times and haven't heard back.
Well, congratulations, that's great news.
Thank you. I mean, we need, I would like to see a little more traction, to be honest. I mean, it was great that he said yes, but I need to get his attention again and see if we can move forward
Great,
with that.
thank you.
I was his teacher's assistant in 2000, so feel free to drop my name.
Okay.
Just
Well,
anything I can do to
I
help.
may bring you to the meeting.
That's
Well,
right.
and
You
ISD
too.
budget's coming up for the next year. That's definitely a concern with promised funds, so that happening faster than, and the reallocation and all of that, so, something to consider.
Yeah. But we'll be persistent in following up. That was, he had committed to that, so I think he'll follow through with that. Another gap, or another sidewalk gap is in that same area that is, grant eligible, CDBG grant eligible, was Palomino. I think this, stretch is a good selection because it's one of those east-west corridors that would really help connect the neighborhood to the boulevard, to parks. So Thompson was one of our biggest and more recent sidewalk projects that goes north and south. So this one I think is another good option.
I think this one would be really beneficial because it connects the neighborhood, like you said, to all the shops and stuff that are right there, the food. I think it would be really.
And it's one of the few that connects through Thompson. So Southern is the other one, which we'll be finishing up with our current one, but Palomino is the other one that connects through Thompson. The runners-up choice for this list, just in case y'all are interested, if y'all get really happy and fund all of these, is Hampshire. It connects similar to like Opal from McRoy to Longhorn. If that is something y'all are interested in, I can provide you a cost for that. But we chose Palomino because it was a little more palatable, and it connects east and west. Okay. I love talking streets and sidewalks, so I'm sure y'all are getting worn out, so hopefully a refreshing transition.
I could add another sidewalk on that gap
Okay,
from, not necessarily Spring Hollow, but the next street down. Because Spring Creek, that housing development, Old Saginaw High School, they have to walk to school. There is no sidewalk down McElroy to get to the bump.
so Spring Hollow, you're saying,
It's actually the next street over, which,
where it's Sansom on the south
yeah,
side?
it's Sampson on the south side.
Yeah, I don't have that. Oh, it's something Creek.
Creek Terrace,
Creek
yes.
Terrace. And so where would that gap go, you're saying? Oh, it would go to Levon?
Yeah, there's actually a sidewalk from Creek Terrace to the end of the housing development, and then it ends, but from there over to Levon,
Mm-hmm.
because walking on
Right.
McElroy to get to school
Mm-hmm.
and home.
And then I'll just mention, so phase 2B of the project would also have that same sidewalk incorporated into its design. But if, I would be happy to provide you a cost for just the sidewalk if that's what you'd like. I can do that.
I would, because I think the GAP program may happen quicker than the road,
Mm-hmm.
and that would reduce some cost on the road, wouldn't it? Or not?
Certainly, yeah, we would do our best, I mean, we would design it in a manner to where we wouldn't be, it would be usable. It can be a challenge to do that at times, but it's definitely possible. We just put it as far up against the right-of-way as we can, at elevations that make sense. Okay, so gap from Creek Terrace to Levon. We can get that. Are there sidewalks on Levon?
No.
But it's almost like 48 feet wide, I believe, because I know it has
It's a wider road, less traffic than. McElroy.
3 joints there. So are they just walk up Levon or maybe right off the side of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The city mows right, the side, right
Yeah.
after, like where a sidewalk should be.
Okay. We can get that for you, certainly. Okay. Reminder, Laura Presley did all the hard work on all of this, so please don't give me any credit, but I'm very familiar with it. So some of the ongoing park projects we have right now are Opal Joe Jennings and Brian Schwengler. So both of those were funded with the 2021 bond program. We are very close to final design on those right now. Our goal is to advertise them in January. And then we would look to start construction in the summer. And I know Laura's worked with a few of y'all to get those selected and in motion, so really excited for those. Depending on how the bids come back for those 2 projects, there may be a small remaining balance that could be utilized to replace, I think, been on top of the list if the funding is available to replace it with a new rubberized surface and a shade structure and new playground equipment.
Would that be the one like by the dog park or the one by the baseball?
The dog park.
And the design for these 2 parks came out of the 2021 bond?
Yes, sir.
What was the cost for that?
I don't have that. Do you happen to have that? Or we could give it to you this week if you'd
Okay,
like.
that's fine. Go ahead.
Who?
For
Oh, Adele?
Joe Jennings and Brian Schindler, the allocated was 2.335 million, and the expended so far, we're in the very beginning stages, is $558,017.39.
Is the design complete?
Design is not complete, but we're fully under contract.
The paid, yeah.
So a total of 2.3 million for design for 2 parks?
For both.
No, for all of it.
Is that,
Joe and Brian.
that price for design and construction?
Yes, both.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeah, but not just design. That would be astronomical.
Glad we clarified that. Okay.
So Laura and the Parks Board have are finalizing an update to the Parks Master Plan. This was after a combination meeting that occurred between City Council and the Parks Board where there was a final round of review and comments. And what month was that in? September or October?
I think, say it was October.
It was October, okay. So, knowing that this bond committee meeting was happening, Laura worked hard to get those updates made and then brought back those updates to the park board so that we could get input and direction of the park board's priorities. And so what we're presenting to you today is the Parks Board's priorities for this bond program. That doesn't, obviously, necessarily mean you're held to this, but we think, they have a good pulse on what's going on and what's needed, so that's why we look to them for input. So, this is where we get to use the pretty graphics if you would like. So the first one is William Houston. We have these priorities broken into 6 priorities, but they are all contained within 3 parks. So they're not necessarily in order of, one park at a time, but so I may bounce around a little bit. The first park is William Houston. So this is off of Park Center on the very northwest side of town. And priority 1 is the baseball field, the concessions, the bleachers, and the parking lot of this plan. So not the plan in its entirety, but mainly the baseball field and the parking lot. The total cost for design and construction of this would be $4.6 million. Is the format that I'm presenting this, does that make sense about the prioritization? Okay, just want to make sure. It just so happens that the second priority from the Parks Board meeting was also at William Houston, and it was the playground structure that's shown in pink. It's circled by a blue dotted line. So that would be the playgrounds, swing sets, shade structure, rubberized surface, those types of amenities. And Parks Board members, please speak up if I say anything wrong, but I believe the intentionality of this was, we want this to be fully able to host families so that while the ball field's being utilized by, older siblings or parents, that there is a play structure available for the rest of that family, correct? Yeah. Total cost for this is $2.15 million. Okay, so the third priority is Willow Creek Park, or is a phase of Willow Creek Park, I will say. This phase that was priority 3 is the dog park. So one of the emphasis of reconstructing this dog park is to make it larger, add a lot more of amenities, not only for the animals, but also for the pet owners, such as benches and shade, I think water, stuff like that, pavilions. The other idea of expanding this and reconstructing it is that it would add a third paddock or a third area where dogs could play. This would allow staff to rotate the fields, which would allow the grass and turf to kind of recover and keep those fields in a better condition throughout the year. So this would really enhance and improve that dog park. And then all new fencing. Laura, am I missing anything? Is that a parking lot? No, that's not right.
No parking lot as part of this phase, but it would have sidewalk connections to the existing
Okay.
parking lot and sidewalk.
And then pavilions as well.
Yes.
Okay.
shade pavilion.
So cost for that is $1.15 million. We're going to come back to Willow Creek Park after this, but the fourth priority is in Highland Station Park. So this would be considered, the north area or maybe northeast area of Highland Station Park, also in the northeast area of town. The improvements that we're looking to include in this phase of Highland Station Park would be basketball courts, adding 2 basketball courts, pickleball courts, adding 4 of those. This would keep the existing skate park, the existing tennis court, the existing basketball court, which is used for a variety of things. And then it would also have a reconstructed dog park. There's not enough room, is my understanding, to necessarily do the 3 paddock idea of being able to rotate those fields, but this would include pavilions and some of those other amenities for dogs and dog owners.
So is the idea on the Highland Station Park what's the little cul-de-sac by the existing skate park?
That's an existing cul-de-sac, and it is mostly used for like PV access to get, and
Right.
emergency access to get into the park.
So unfortunately, Highland Station Park doesn't have the wonderful ability that Willow Creek does, where you can drive the entire distance. How did you come up with putting basketball and pickleball at the far end of the park?
We looked at kind of space available and existing grades, so if you walk from kind of the left side of the image in, you're kind of going downhill, and there are some slopes into that creek and drainage area, and then once you get to kind of the skate park is where it starts to flatten out, and we're not having to fight grade to put in a flat surface for like pickleball or basketball. So where that kind of natural growth of trees is, kind of slopes fairly significantly, so if putting it back together would be, you would take out all those existing trees, and then you would be bringing in a lot of filter, which would add cost.
And just to reiterate, these have gone through a lot of cycles, so,
The opposite of that would be people would use it.
I mean, I go to this park almost every Saturday, and there are people on the existing basketball court that's pretty much as far in as you can go, and then use that for playing basketball, but also for working out,
But you know where they're coming from.
the sidewalks.
No, they're coming from the apartment complex.
What does that matter?
I mean, I've seen people walking in
Right.
the park on the sidewalks from like parking lot.
the Highland Station or the, what are those
Yeah,
apartments
I
called?
just, you know, you're the park expert, but I think it's in the wrong spot
Can we,
for the people to use it.
I'd like to get some of the park board's members' opinion on this too, just because I know y'all, you know.
And park board members that live at this park.
I don't live in that area, but I know that the desire and the need for more basketball courts along with pickleball courts is exponential. We have
I'm not
people
I'm not
come to-
arguing that. I'm not arguing that.
And they've said, I mean, I know you guys just said you went through all the testing and you would have to bring in, what was it, more dirt or something like that to level things out. I know there's all kinds of drainage issues and with the water and stuff like that. So, I mean, your opinion that you just stated, that you believe this is gonna be the better route cost-wise as well. Because you would have to have all those extra expenditures to have the courts in a different location within this park.
Yes, so I'm happy to put them in a different location, but it will be more expensive, and you will remove a lot of existing large trees, which is usually something that people feel very unhappy about.
Well, no, I agree with that, but what does the land look like just to the right of the dog park?
It's flat-ish, but it's not as flat as you might think it is when you're standing out there looking at it. Because the basketball courts and pickleball courts will be like 1% grade, which is
Or,
basically,
so my understanding of parks is a park should be available within 10 minutes of walking, correct?
it depends on the size of park. So that's a neighborhood park scale, would be like a quarter mile.
10 minutes, yeah. So how many people in this neighborhood did y'all talk to?
We talked with the Parks Board and people came to Parks Board meetings, but this is not considered a neighborhood park. This is considered a community park or regional park, so it has a wider, like 1 mile radius.
I think if we want to tweak the conceptual design for this, Rick, you know, we can take that as a comment for sure. I don't know that I want to keep going down the route of, you know,
We can
Picking Laura's-
definitely, you know, as we're prioritizing things at the Parks Board, like have that conversation. I know Brack, while he was on the Parks Board, was very involved in the discussions of
Right.
this park because he lives over there.
Yeah.
He's now on council, so we can always ask him. I will say this, because we're about to get to Willow Creek Park, like you saw pickleball courts at William Houston. You're seeing pickleball courts here. You're about to see pickleball courts at Willow Creek. And those are things that are fluctuating. We had the conversation about it in our last meeting about if we're doing one thing in one area, like a lot of people want pickleball courts and it's just kind of figuring out where's it gonna fit out best within the parks that we have available.
Yeah, I think we discussed that if we have 3 courts in the 3 big parks, I wouldn't want to take out the Highland Station because it's the only one on this side, on
Right.
the east
Yeah,
side, versus the 2 that are pretty much, within a mile of each other, I think. So it just depends on
Yeah, and
location.
just because William Houston Park Phase 2 has pickleball courts and was a higher priority, doesn't mean that we need to do those pickleball courts before we do redevelopment, like, and say this one, the Highland Station Park.
as
And
far as
don't get
Highland
me wrong.
Station, where you've got people going in to play basketball and pickleball, I mean, are they too tired to walk that extra little distance? I mean, if you're going in to play basketball, you're gonna be exerting some energy. You're gonna be moving around.
And I'll point out they are closer to the parking lot than the existing basketball court and the existing tennis court, so.
So is that parking lot with the building, is that to the right side, right to the north of the existing?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rhonda, you lost me. Where you,
court?
the parking lot
Okay,
with
so
the
where
building.
pickleball courts are, there's a parking lot and a building, is that?
That's a
that
skate
apartment
park.
complex?
Oh, that's the apartment complex.
That's the apartment complex. Okay.
Yep.
Is it feasible, that access for the place to drive down,
So
to put a parking lot down there?
we had that in our original concept and received a lot of negative feedback. The current master plan from 2020, or maybe it was 2021, was adopted, had a extension of that street with full-in parking that went all the way into the park, and it was very,
I think the comment was, I don't want to spend park money building parking lots, was that we received, right?
Wait a minute, where were you proposing to build the parking lot?
I think next to the skate park.
there was a parking lot that was included on kind of the southeast as part of that, but then there was also head-in parking along the existing emergency access road with a turnaround. And both of those ideas, people were very against putting more parking inside.
People being the park board?
People being the Parks Board as well as the community members that came to Parks Board meetings. So that was the kind of overarching feedback from Parks Board, the public, and council.
Was that also when we had the information session in the rec center?
I think it was before that. And I thought council had some input on that as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
council also had lots of concerns about doing that.
So,
Those were
I think that maybe it was the cost of versus the cost of doing this versus this at the time, maybe if I remember right. Of do we want to pay to put in a parking lot, or do we want to use that money for whatever other project we were looking at?
I think at the time, all of the parks master planning documents, each park had like all of the dream scenarios in one OPCC, which was quite overwhelming. And when people were like, this is just unmanageable, I think the first thing they look at were like, why am I paying $700,000 for parking lots? And so that was, but I think Parks Board has worked hard to kind of divvy these up into tangible phases and priorities. We have 2 more here. So going back to Willow Creek Park, I think as Thomas mentioned, where's my Willow Creek Park?
I'm sorry, just before we move on to Willow Creek, just that land between the school and the apartments, is that all school land right there?
I'm not sure who owns it, but it is not the city.
Okay.
I don't know.
I would assume it's ISD, but it may not be, but it doesn't have access.
I think where their dotted line is, the blue dotted line on the north side of the park, that's the school district. I
It looks
believe.
like right on the very north, the legend, there you can see like the track and field amenities, so yeah.
Yeah, I think just out of frame would be like their practice field.
Yeah, and since that developer's come in, I don't think they would have isolated any
Okay.
remaining parcel of land. Okay, so priority 5. This is the second mention of pickleball courts. I know that has been a priority to some. This
Okay.
is,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You just said that voters didn't want to pay for a parking lot, but we're paying for 127 spaces.
So
What's the truth?
no, that was the feedback we got on the proposal for the Highland Station, yeah, but to add sport courts here, the parking lot here is not sized appropriately, and especially with the, expansion of the dog park, that's kind of what's folded into this.
Farmers market, I mean, there's so much stuff that happens there.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, that was the feedback we got on specifically the Highland Station concept.
No, it doesn't make sense because of the comment. The feedback was you didn't want to pay, someone didn't want to pay for parking lot. But then the feedback is, okay, it's okay to pay for a parking lot.
This is a different park, right? It's
Well,
a
of
different
course it's a
scenario.
different
Willow
park. I'm
Creek
not
Park.
stupid.
I didn't say
Well,
that,
each park
Mr.
has
Russell.
different needs.
Yeah, they're
So
different.
Because we have the parade goes through here, we have farmers markets, we have a lot more events coming out of this park
Correct.
on Willow Creek. It makes that much more sense to me why you would need an additional parking, because it does run all the way from Longhorn to McLeroy, from McLeroy all the way.
So what's the reason for the new parking lot at William Houston? There's a parking lot already there.
The existing parking lot doesn't meet the needs of the use, and we're bringing in kind of a bigger and improved use.
So if you add the basketball courts and the pickleball, the needs are met with the current small parking lot?
So in Highland Station, we included in one of the future phases that's not part of this, an expansion of the park. It is included in the future. It wasn't a priority of the park board or council or the public in all of the past public meetings.
And that might have changed because that was a few years ago. So now priorities might have changed because back then we had a lot going on. We were deciding where we want to allocate this money. What's more important, this. Well, this, not this.
Yeah,
So
right.
now it's a different set of priorities. Now what are we wanting? Do we want this, and this? Now that smaller parking lot, that might be a priority. That's what I'm thinking. So.
Is it in the master plan? Okay, so there is a parking lot at Highland Station Park. It's in the master plan, but it didn't make this round of, hey, if we're gonna come to the voters with anything this year, what are
Okay.
the bigger things?
So one last question, since it's in the master plan, where is that parking lot?
It is off of, I want to say it's Trinity Trail on the south side. So it would be where, there's an existing parking lot there right now.
The small one?
The small one, and it would be an expansion of that based on.
Yeah.
It would require stormwater improvements to box that
Can you,
culvert.
can you just point that out, where that would be on this
It's
map?
not.
It's not on.
It's not on the,
It's on
So
this
it's
handout.
our packet from the
Okay, so you're talking about, doing an extension off of here? Like to go down further, or just to make this
No, what's
larger?
shown is the expansion, I believe. That parking lot right now is a lot smaller, because there's a creek that runs through there. And you do have a scene of something.
I think the only true new parking lot that's being built in a park is the one that's down by the food truck park, once that gets figured out. And that's already accounted for through a different set of funds, right?
That's already paid for.
Everything else would be expanding an existing parking lot where people are already used to going to be able to access the parks there. And I think part of the feedback, in addition to not building new ones, was utilize or improve the ones that we had.
Yeah. Yeah.
As much
it
as
was-
possible.
It
There's-
was,
With the food truck park, that doesn't have that's a necessity based on how popular that section is.
yeah. It was certainly a balance I think y'all had to fight because you got both. You got pushed from both ends. Like, I don't want to spend my money on parking lots, but you also got a lot of complaints that there's not enough parking in this park. Where
And
am I
they
supposed
just
to park?
added all that parking to, right at the corner of Longhorn and Knowles.
Was that me that said it? Were you not throwing me under the bus? Am I the one that said that? Sounds like something.
I
else.
really don't know who said it.
I didn't go, I'm guessing if y'all, Gabe, were you at the farmer's market on Saturday?
Yeah, it was, so Willow Creek Park compared to Highland Station, night and day difference regarding parking because they're used differently, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, Saturday, the Christmas market was packed. I
So
went,
how was the parking? Like, was there enough parking spaces between those two, the new one and the other one?
I
Do you
mean-
feel that we would? it
so
would
the
be-
new lot helped, which I think was that like 40-some spaces at the corner, Longhorn and,
It was more.
I mean, it helped, but like at 9:30 or 10, people were parking on the grass in the western lot. And I think that's something we'll have to discuss in the future because that will continue to be kind of the event hub. And if you had a chance to go to the night markets this year, they were very popular. I think they're gonna come back, so, yeah, I understand the concern related to Highland Station, Willow Creek Park, but they're two very different dynamics, so each park is designed differently because of that.
I agree, it needs to be more, that the Highland Station needs to be more accessible, but it's just
Yeah,
a matter of how.
And so the tough part with Highland Station is, as y'all know that live in the area, it's like a kind of a giant L, and it's very deep, as opposed to like Willow Creek Park, which is just linear, and there's pockets of parking and kind of throughout. So I understand the concern.
And for the Parks Board members, first, thank you for adding pickleball courts. It's the fastest growing sport in America, and I play it. Not very good, but I play it. But, so thank you for adding it. I just, for the people that I see walking this park, and carrying your equipment, maybe we don't have the luxury that Willow Creek does. It's great access to Willow Creek. But as we make the decisions on what we're gonna put in a bond, I think we need to, or the taxpayers are gonna get their money out of it. And that's what I keep thinking about. I mean, it's not that you put them in the wrong place, are the taxpayers gonna get the most benefit out of it?
Oh, I definitely believe so.
I just don't think they'll walk down there.
I mean, you go to a park for exercise, there's gonna be miles to walk, you're going to be exuding yourself, playing all these sports. I think it's kind of implied, and I'm not saying that a parking lot is not important or more spaces are not, which it is, and it is in phase 3. But just for the time being, for right now, for this specific bond, it wasn't high up on our list with the other things going into this park. But I think the next round, we should definitely be putting in parking.
Yeah, and if there's something there that's driving people to say, hey, we're now not against the parking lot out there because we want it because there is all this great new stuff that's out there and we want to be able to access it a little bit easier.
Well,
That's why it exists still in the master plan, but we're whittling down.
I look at it a little differently. The residents that live there don't want the parking lot because they don't want outsiders coming and use their park. The ones that don't live next to it want the parking lot so they can go there and use the park. So it's a balance. Do you want to keep the homeowners adjacent to the park happy with no parking lot? Or the homeowners that don't live there that want to go use that park?
Are these gonna be lit?
Well, it has to be accessible to everybody, because I used to live right across the street from Willow Creek Park, and it would have been nice if it was all my park to use, but it's not all my park to use. So yes, I have to, there's a parking lot across from my old house. So now I live on the other side.
You bring up a good point, and she's looking up, are they lit?
So in William Houston, we've included budget for them to be lit. And then Highland Station.
And maybe a better phrase is they are not currently budgeted to be lit, right? We could add that,
Budget
certainly.
numbers interesting include them being lit at William Houston, but not at, Highland Station, and then they include them being lit at Willow Creek. So Highland Station
Well-
right now does not budget for lights.
And to clear something up real quick, just to make sure we're on the same page, a lot of people are talking about the pickleball courts at, William Houston, but those weren't in the priorities, right?
That's correct. They're,
For that particular park?
Right, right.
Like it's, again,
There was,
master plan, but
they're in the master plan, but they
not
weren't in the
something that would
priorities.
come to the- Not something that we would bring to this committee or to council for this year's,
Yeah.
if we're gonna submit bonds.
Unless this committee decided, you know, to maybe remove them from somewhere else and add them in, but that would be, I think y'all's opinion was that was a lot of investment at one park, maybe spread it out a little bit. Okay, great discussions. Any questions on, did I talk about this? Pickleball courts, pavilions?
I will say this for the people that are here, when we had the Parks Board and City Council, what do we call that game?
Joint.
Workshop, oh, sorry. Many of the mayor and a lot of the council members had said, when it comes to park, William Houston Park needs to be addressed imminently, you know, through something. When we looked at we got $4 million from the last bond for parks. And we had somebody come to us and want us to regrade and lay all, the soil out there at William Houston Park is terrible. And it's ruddy and it's just terrible soil. And so it would take removing all of it and rebuilding it from scratch to do it. And that was gonna eat up our full $4 million. So we didn't do it then. So because, but this is a new design, a new repurpose for that park. And it's been deemed a priority by council. They would be more receptive to those things than anything.
Another good thing about William Houston is that once it's completed, we can get money from renting out the ball field to players and different tournaments, stuff like that. So we'll be able to recoup some money off it as well.
I'm just curious, what was, why was it a softball field versus like a soccer field on that William Houston Park?
They are
program?
playing soccer in there right now.
I'm sorry?
They are playing soccer in there right now.
So if they build the softball field, it will not be soccer anymore?
It's going to be it's going to be a baseball field. So the dimensions are going to allow baseball, because the one that's at Willow Creek Park right now does not have the dimensions to have baseball games. This one would. Soccer fields in the soccer complex is part of the master plan at Belt Mill.
Oh, right.
Is that what it's called? And
Yeah, but that is not going through because that was low priority. So, right, so that's not gonna even be.
well, and there's also other things that have to happen over there before really we can feasibly go in there and start laying.
I was just asking the question because, I don't know if you were on the park board, so SYA came to the meeting and was requesting that money to have that.
Yes,
field.
that was the soccer association, which was paying $750 a year or something to be able to
Yes.
rent it.
Right.
And while it is designed and there are nets out there for soccer right now,
Yeah.
nobody's really playing soccer out there because it's in such bad condition.
It is, so they wanted like a better field so that they
Yes.
could play. So that's why I was just curious. I just wanted to know like why it was deemed like a baseball field versus soccer field. So that way, anybody from the soccer association comes and asks me, say, hey, you know, we asked for this years ago and now you're doing this. You know, I want to be able to say, well, it's because of this.
Yeah, and it's because at that time, like, it would have eaten up every single dollar we had available. We couldn't have done Opal Joe Park. We couldn't have done Brian Swingler Park. We couldn't have done a number of things that.
Well, I understand that, but I'm talking about now.
I think
Oh,
part
yeah.
of the
Now,
answer-
if it gets through a different bond, yeah, absolutely. And we changed it to be something that would be equally as demanded as soccer fields was a true baseball field. And I don't know, the Belt Mill Park has multiple sizes for multiple different age groups, multiple experience levels. I don't think we get that, and I think that you run into, if you did it at William Houston Park and you only had one soccer field or two soccer fields, I think you get into such a competing for the time
Okay.
that it leaves a bad taste in people's mouth.
Okay, so if anybody asks you, just say, well, that's in the plans for another.
We've got it, and it's gonna
Okay.
be bigger and better than it would be at William Houston Park.
Okay,
I think the other,
For William Houston, yes.
softball, it says softball,
backwards.
It is definitely sized for baseball, can
Oh,
confirm.
yeah.
but it's sized for baseball.
Yes.
It could be-
sized
It was in one of our
with
meetings.
a 350-foot center line.
Which is what you have.
So it'd be both. I believe, I remember a discussion that, this park was one of the only ones that was appropriately sized for a baseball field, right?
Yes,
Because Belt
other
Mill is
than-
kind of an L, right? What other park would have maybe
I mean, Willow Creek, but the creek kind of,
floodplain?
yeah, squeezes your, which is probably your mouse.
Because I think I remember, I don't know if it was like before Randy had the idea or Randy supported the idea. He wanted a new baseball field and he was excited to see that it could fit at William Houston. And I think it's one of the only ones that it can.
Yeah, because I believe if we hadn't been able to fit a baseball field there, it was gonna be something different with the redesign.
Yeah.
So if we
Okay.
could just change the word.
We weren't looking to make a second softball field.
Yeah, okay.
There is one more. So this is another phase of the Highland Station Park Master Plan. It's the very west portion. And so this would connect a trail that currently goes from High Country Trail up the utility easement and would connect it over to Basswood. So besides just a vision of larger regional trail connectivity, I don't remember any other particular motivators for this besides it's, helps that end goal.
Accessibility.
Accessibility, yeah. Okay, and that concludes the parks. I do have a slide that says what else. So I've got.
I'm sorry, I just want to go back to that Highland Station Park. So what's the difference between that trail and the access road that's there?
The trail is west of the High Country Trail. I don't believe, unless we're talking about different segments, I don't believe there is a access road there.
So I thought she was saying this was the emergency access road.
Right, yeah, we're talking about two different locations.
Okay.
Let me. So, right here, that's graphic, so this is the emergency access road.
Mm-hmm, correct?
This trail, that's the last phase is right here.
Got it. Okay, so, this is not the picture. Oh, my
I'm on the
bad.
wrong- I'm on the
Sorry,
wrong
I'm on the
slide.
wrong picture.
Oh, you're on the wrong one. I'm on the wrong one too, I think. Are you messing with me, Pedro? I'm trying to go to the last one.
It's all Pedro's fault.
Yep.
There we go.
Are you on the, any more questions?
Yes.
So I don't know if this is for Parks Board or Kimley Horn or Gabe or who. With our parks, and if the voters approve it, we're going to have some pretty darn amazing places to go play. Are there going to be, you've seen them around college campuses, the emergency phones if somebody, does that, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the little stations where you press a
You
button
press the
and it
button and
automatically
911,
alerts
yeah,
your location.
and it sends the location. I mean, Willow Creek Park, there's some pretty long stretches. Highland Station Park's pretty long stretches. I don't know what Belt Mill's gonna look like, but are those in the plans? Are there gonna be, almost hate to say it, video cameras? Or some kind of cameras? I mean, this equipment that we're putting at the parks also cost money. Well, I need to invest in playground equipment. But what's the security plan for our parks? Because this is some good stuff.
So right now, the cost estimates don't include emergency access phones or, security cameras. That's absolutely something we can look at, including, we can talk with, Public Works and PD to get their.
I didn't include Lee on that question, by the way.
Would-
Go ahead, Lee.
Would there be safety grants for things like that? Safety grants for things like that?
Well, I guess Thomas, you and the park, I don't know who all's on the parks board here.
Rhonda?
But, so my question to you is that just a nice to have? It's something we should look at? What do you think?
Honestly, I can't recall that it's come up in our meetings. I know different safety things have come up
It
in our
has
meetings.
come up before, years ago. It might have been so long ago. And the cost for putting up cameras was more than what we could afford. But we thought about doing that because at the time graffiti charge for cleaning up graffiti and repairing all the things that was going on was climbing higher and higher. So it has been talked about, but cameras weren't put in just because of cost.
And at that point, it was more of a deterrent to the,
More of a deterrent.
to the graffiti that was happening.
The theft.
As far as safety is concerned, we could always definitely talk about that and work with Laura and, on finding out what the cost would be on those and probably prioritize maybe parks where there are people walking a distance, and maybe if it's a stretch where there's not a lot of public visibility, like kind of putting them in at least the button push. you
Yeah, the
know,
button push, yeah.
For those, then we can definitely talk about that.
I've fallen and can't get up,
Yeah, you
know.
And I would think that we would start with looking at parks where the visibility of a certain walkway maybe gets credence.
Yeah, all I'd add to that conversation is the call boxes and camera systems are becoming a lot more common in parks than they used to be. And that and the technology behind it, I think, has driven the price of some of the camera systems and things down a little bit, probably in the last few years. But certainly dark areas, isolated areas, parking lots, places like that, or entrances, restrooms, those kind of places within the parks are very common to be surveilled by some sort of camera system.
Thanks,
And
Lee.
then the call boxes, again, are becoming common in areas that tend to get congested a lot, or in terms of parks or other, public facilities or public areas. So that's just food for thought on those things.
I kind of have a question on that with the call boxes. How utilized are they when everybody has a cell phone? So it'd be only when you don't have a cell phone or you want to contact, like on campus, a college campus, you're contacting the campus police directly. So how-
Yeah, and that's a good question. They're probably, so, I know for one thing, if kids know they're there and kids are not carrying cell phones, it's available to younger people. And, they need to be lit up and with signage that they're evidently there. And again, those are things that are somewhat of a deterrent rather than something that's gonna be used every day or every week or whatever, but I don't.
I do know if it works one time, the same one person, it
Sure.
pays for itself. I'm not
Yeah,
disputing that.
no, I don't have any statistics on the usage of it, but you're right. I mean, most people are gonna turn to their cell phone first, but it is an alternative.
Anything else, any other questions or homework you'd like to give us to bring back?
I had a couple people ask, you know, and I moved back, I think after a lot of that was already decided, so I'm even ignorant on it, but asking the phase in which I think at one point Willow Creek Park was rumored to have like some type of splash pad, water stuff like that. I just.
So it was kind of talks in the plan with that new, accessibility, park that they had there. And then it just came down to the cost was too much, on top of insurance and what the city would be liable for having.
Well, a lot of it,
Safety concerns.
when we were having those conversations, that survey that came out that said overwhelmingly that people wanted splash pads, and Laura came to one of our meetings with 12 to 14 different areas of where they recommended putting free splash pads, and we're still paying on the bond for the water park next door.
Yeah.
And we had a committee member who worked for the city of Irving, and a part of her job was having to deal with the constant headaches of the free water pads and splash pads that they had, and having to shut them down multiple times due to bacteria. And I believe, and when we had that overwhelmingly, they want splash pads in every neighborhood, how many people do you happen to remember how many people took that survey? It was under 100 people.
I think maybe what changed was that, the incident in Arlington with the amoeba.
Yes, the amoeba in Arlington had to shut down, and while they're awesome, they are hotbeds for disease and ongoing maintenance. They're not going to make any money. They're only going to be a cost, and I mean, it would be sweet, but there's a lot of we have access to things like that, and people just unfortunately either don't want to or are stubborn to try to utilize what's already available from the city rec. And the aquatic center is very fairly priced for residents. Not so much for non-residents, but then again, they didn't put in on it. Sorry, am I sounding rude and condescending? I didn't want to sound rude and condescending. But, I mean, if people come and ask about that, we'll always entertain the conversation, but nothing from the experience of neighboring municipalities that have them have been positive. So,
Roanoke has a really nice one that I used to take my kids up to. It was concrete, it wasn't that soft stuff, so it was fairly easy to clean, but
Yeah, I'm
I'm-
thinking
I'm
about like
curious
Dove
to
Park
see
and
what
Grapevine
their-
and some of those. Yeah.
their advice would be.
Anything else? Okay, so I've got, I'm gonna provide, I'll call it sump prices, the utility prices along with those pavement rehabs for Park Center and Opal, and then, the sidewalk gap along McRoy between the, Spring Hollow, the Creek Terrace to Lavon. And then I
And
think,
we're going to get school district to build that sidewalk.
getting what?
Get the school district to build that sidewalk.
Follow up with cleats. Yes. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the Parks Master Plan on the website?
So I believe the one that we are working on, update for has not been adopted by council yet.
Ah.
Once it's adopted, it will be. So the one that's available online is the 2021.
Ah, you're right.
So these will all be up. I would guess by.
Second. What?
it's important to know when you look at that, that's a laundry list of just everything possible that we could do with
Yeah, we'll
parks.
take a break. Yeah. Anybody need to take a
It's
break? We'll
just
take a
money.
5-minute break. You need to.
What?
So we're going to take about a 5-minute break. We've had at least one taker for that, so. But you can go ahead and, you can go ahead and grill Trenton all you want to.
Just like.
Oh, no, that's right, and I'm not gonna take up a whole lot of y'all's time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's that?
I can Get Rick to sit
No,
down
I
and I'll
live
get
over
started.
by Barack,
Now, I'm gonna send y'all a bunch
Spring
of
Creek neighborhood.
more material and stuff to study over, so you got something to do during Christmas break, right? So again, my name is Lee Howell, in case anybody's forgotten that from a few weeks ago, but since our last meeting, we took some tours of 3 different animal shelters. And about half the people here and a few more that aren't here went on those tours. We visited the North Richland Hills facility, the Fort Worth ACC, and the Hearst facility. So regardless, let me say, start this off too, as regardless of what happens with this committee's recommendation or the facility expansion in later times, you know, I think the thing that when you compare what our staff is doing in the facility that we're currently in to, and then see what these other facilities or how they're designed and set up and operated, you realize that our staff is incredibly dedicated and working as hard as they possibly can to do the job they're doing. And they are very compassionate people. We have some people that have been working there for 20 years or more in the same facility that is now, you know, literally being every square inch of it being used for multiple purposes. So so what I wanted to do, I'm not going to, I'll send you some photographs and things of some of the highlights of our tour, but just wanted to cover one more time some of the takeaways from what we learned. And Rick and Adele and Judy and anybody else, please chime in, but you know, they were there at the tours, and so I want to give y'all some floor time as well on this, but you know, the contrasts are pretty stark. You know, each one of these facilities has been built in the last 10 years. They've been built anywhere from, I think, about 2015 to 2021. And they're all 3 uniquely different. They all have some commonalities that we don't currently have. Number one, just walking in the door of each of these facilities, it is bright and inviting. There's room to walk around and visit with people. They have high ceilings in the buildings, natural light in the lobby areas and in the kennel areas. They all have very extensive kennel cleaning facilities. In other words, so each one of these, actually, they're all a little bit different, but they're not just a concrete pad surrounded by bars. They have built-in drainage systems, washing down systems. They even have one facility even has a automatic Rainbird controlled sprinkler system that washes everything down 3 times a day by itself, you know. So they're all very clean. And when I see their cleaning systems, it stands out how much how our facility is vastly labor intensive. And again, our staff is doing a remarkable job just keeping it clean on a daily basis. Some other big contrasts, you don't walk into the kennel areas of where the dogs are, where there's 30 dogs in there barking at each other and you, to view the animals. All the animals are viewed through a glass enclosure they're inside their own kennels, but there's glass enclosures separating the public from the animals. So you can walk by, you can kind of watch them, see how they look, see how they react to you, And then when you want to meet an animal, there's separate areas that you can kind of retire to for a few minutes to meet and play with the animals and get to know them and kind of see if you're a good fit for each other. Some of them are some unique visitation areas. The Hearst facility was I think probably the most unique. It had little glass circular enclosures right off the lobby that were really convenient and probably very easy to use, located where they were easy to get dogs or cats out into those areas. Open at the top, but about 6.5, 7 feet tall, glass and other structures, places to sit down. So there's a different way of doing all these things, but they all had those unique viewing and visitation areas that were separated. And so there's a lot of good, you probably know this intuitively, but there's a lot of good things about that. People don't walk by, like in our facility, people can walk by, they can touch the animals can touch them, and they go to the next facility. And people are sticking their fingers in the kennels, and then they're now passing whatever gets off of one dog or cat to the entire population at times. Not a good situation. So these other ones are much healthier environments in that regard. They all had expansive rec yards. Now they all had outdoor AstroTurf type rec yards. The Hearst facility is in a unique situation because they're located immediately in front of an outdoor dog park that is about 10 times the size of our dog park in Willow Creek. Beautiful oak treed area with multiple enclosures or fencings. And so they could actually turn some of the animals into that on a daily basis. The Fort Worth facility, it has 7 separate buildings, 5 dog housing kennels for just a healthy, everyday dogs that where they stay every day. They all had, kennels that go outside to open air, and those were all artificially turfed as well. And we learned a lot of different things about that. There's some good things about it. It again is easier to clean and disinfect than dirt and grass. Dirt and grass is great for an animal to run in for a little while, but when you're talking about, in these cases, sometimes 60, 70, 80 dogs going outside in the same area, it's much healthier and better disease control for that to be an artificial surface. Those areas were well designed and secure. I'm talking about the outdoor rec yard exercise areas, and each one of them had some sort of shade facility built onto it, which we don't really have. We have some trees, and we're exploring at some shade areas, ways to shade our rec facilities, but all of these were set up that way. The kennels were all very similar and not too much unlike ours in some ways. However, the kennels were all built mainly from stainless steel. Some Fort Worth's, all of their dog kennels areas were prefab metal buildings with just concrete flooring and walls that are all one piece, kind of curved up. They had drain systems in it. The concrete was supposed to be sealed, but as old. In fact, I talked to the head guy there at the facility, and he mentioned that you can already see scratches and marks on the floors where the supposed impervious ceiling has been rubbed off by dog claws, and so They're already having some trouble with that. The difference between flooring and the other two facilities have an impervious laminate type flooring that's put down on concrete that in many cases is like either a solid piece or it's all sealed up, and just has, again, a much better material on the floor for cleaning and for sanitation and to keep things clean. There's a lot of, each of these facilities had isolation and quarantine areas for both cats and dogs. They both had kitten play areas where you can just turn your kittens loose in a little area where people can walk up and watch them play and look at them, or actually go into the facilities and check them out physically. And so lots of good things, but again, the overall take that I had from it was these facilities are much easier to maintain and clean, much more healthier, more sanitary, and a much better living environment than what we can offer. The Hearst facility, which is about the size of ours, I think or about the size of, close to what we had been, what's been suggested that we build. They had 6 people on staff. We have 6 full-time people and 2 part-time people and a bunch of volunteers. Now, they did have a good volunteer crew there, I think, as well, but they seem to be able to maintain that facility with less people than what we're maintaining ours with. So, NRH, a little different, bigger facility that they had. Their capacity was much higher, and they had, I think, about 12, 14 people on staff there. Fort Worth, total different thing. I mean, they had capacity for, I think they said 370 animals. They had a few less than that when we visited. The takeaway from Fort Worth, and they own this property that the ACC has been on. I don't know if anybody else has been there besides the folks that went on the tour, but it's laid out in separate buildings in a little arc, and there's a nice pond feature out there. I think the whole place really was built on a swamp, and they reclaimed some of it, which is kind of typical of city or government type places where it's just cheaper to do it that way, I guess. But I think the takeaway there, and y'all chime in here and correct me if I'm wrong, but the metal prefab is good for some facilities. They had a big 2-story administration building where a lot of staff worked, and they had visitation rooms for people in those areas, but no animals. And then the kennels, though, were just all kind of like cookie cutter, like, I don't know, you might call them a barn with a concrete structure with kennels laid out inside of it. And they all held, I think, about 40 animals apiece, 5 of those for the dogs. And while they weren't inadequate by any means, but they just were not the best layout. They made them that way, thinking that, well, we can any of our staff can come into any dog building and they're in the same layout and everything's the same, and we should be able to handle it better, work it better, clean it better, and handle the dogs and everything better. And I'm sure that's true. Still, just a stark difference, I think, in my opinion. I don't know if y'all want to talk about that at all, but
Between Fort Worth and Hearst?
between Fort Worth and Hearst and NRH. But I think the general consensus is everybody really liked the Hearst facility. The way it's uniquely laid out, it's in you walk into the lobby, and the lobby and reception area is a round room. On the back side of that are some little cat play areas, and then you have the viewing areas for dogs and cats that come up to the side of it. And the whole building is kind of built in a huge triangle. And rec yard out behind it. It seemed to work really well and flow well when we toured through it. And I'll send you some diagrams and stuff of that. You can kind of see how it's laid out.
Can we, like, I want to go take a tour. I wasn't able to go
Hmm?
with y'all last
You-
time, but I'd like to go tour it, like, even if I have to do it by myself.
Oh, we can see, we can probably get another one, yeah. And I think Wednesdays were good for you, or maybe, or it's not Tuesdays, I think, is that what? We can set that up.
Oh, yeah, I'd have to just look at my calendar.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, just get with me and we'll get something going again. And open it up to anybody else who wants to go back. But it's, the Hearst facility, again, had a lot of good features. We learned a lot of things that we also don't want to do. I think one thing that a couple of the places said was they really enjoyed, which would be different from ours, they really enjoyed having basically everything under one roof. So they didn't have to move from one building to the next. Obviously, Fort Worth, totally different, but they did it that way on purpose, and it works for them. But I think the smaller facilities, you know, we have 4 different little buildings, and it's difficult to manage the animals in that setting, and much better for it to be under one roof. Another thing that all of these facilities had that we don't have is a sally port for delivering the animals, unloading them, and getting them into the kennels. They all have secure ones. Again, the NRH and Hearst both, it's just a garage, basically doors on both sides. You drive in, you drive out the other side. But you can secure the doors down, take the animals out of the vehicles, put them in rolling carts or kennels. Fort Worth was, of course, much larger than the other two. Theirs was open air. The other two are not totally finished out inside in terms of, you know, like fancy finished out. They're just a garage, metal garage, but they can be heated at least, and air conditioned so that it's not too bad in there. But you don't, you know, the idea is to have a quick in and out, safe place to unload animals. And where they would, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to note that with the Sally Ports, in 2 of those locations, it was North Fort Worth and Hearst. They both had metal grating around the tops, and they had problems with birds and mice. So moving forward, that would be something to take note on if we are doing the Sally Port, to make sure that's completely enclosed so that we don't have any kind of animal problems or issues with that.
Yeah, good point. There was, like I said, there's a lot of good and bad things about each one, but something else that they all had was some sort of an employee break room, which we don't have. Our employee break room is sort of somebody's office. Yeah, yeah, or the front desk. So there was also, Fort Worth had gone as far as to have a little kind of a lounge area where if somebody's gotten really overworked or stressed out, you can kind of go in and sit in a recliner for a little bit in a low light area and relax them in it. They all had, you know, some sort of kitchen areas where they could keep food and drink for people. They had various types of medical units. Of course, Fort Worth has, every animal that comes in there gets spayed, neutered, vaccinated if there's no record of it, and chipped automatically when they come in. So they have basically a veterinary service at that facility, pretty extensive, and it was pretty busy when we were there. The others are more of as-needed basis, so they're just one small room. Again, our needs assessment said we didn't have to do that. You know, of course, we make good use of TCAP and some of the veterinary services. But again, it's just a consideration at a cost. And let's see, what else? We learned that, you know, there's a lot of water used in animal shelters. Some had built-in water systems in terms of like hose reels that were attached to the wall. That apparently was not a really good thing for some of them. They've had some trouble with them, and it removes some of the flexibility. So, you know, portability of things in a lot of ways is a good thing. And every facility had huge amounts of storage that we don't have in our current setup, or at least controlled air conditioned or controlled rodent reducing areas at least for storage. So lots of differences. Again, those facilities were designed, estimated, and built. And I would have to say, really, even the Hearst facility, which was completed in 2021, you have to consider the cost of those facilities as being a different era than today, or when we would have the opportunity to build anything here. But just as a reminder, our needs assessment said we needed around 12,500 square feet of interior air-conditioned space, about 4,600 feet of exterior kennel space, and which would include some rec yards, and about 2,200 feet of Sallyport, or an inexpensive, you know, area where you can pull vehicles into. And I'll say this, you know, again, the design of it that we saw works the best, and I can tell you this from experience, that a pull-through area with doors on both sides, a little more expensive than just one door, but, you know, the movement that causes more crashes and wrecks is backing up. If we can eliminate backing up, especially with those trucks, with the kennel boxes on.
Another thing that Jose was mentioning, that when you have that Sally port, when you pull those trucks in a hailstorm, it's very expensive to replace some of those things that the trucks have on them. So having that Sally port where they can pull all their trucks in is really cost-saving too, you might say. And
Absolutely.
also, they had the restrooms, where if they come in off a bad incident where they have to clean up, they go right directly into the restroom that has a full shower. It's a large restroom, full, complete restroom with the showers in there. They can go in and clean off all the muck that they might have gotten on. The Sally port, I think, is something that we really, really need.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, that's a good point. And so I'll stop there. If there's any questions, again, I'll send some more pictures. We've got a few more stats that we're waiting on. But again, the budget estimate on our needs assessment was somewhere between 12 to $16 million. That was a 2023 estimate. So should probably add, again, the architect that did the needs assessment suggested a 5% increase per year from her estimate in 2023. And I think Marilyn was here in the last meeting, and when I mentioned that, she said we should probably double that. But I think probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30% increase from those estimates, at least, you know, if we were to do this anytime in the next couple of years. But of course, we would do another estimate based on the design. But any questions or y'all want to add anything else?
I took some extensive notes and photographs, so I'll put all that together and I'll send it to Lee and he can send it out to everybody on the different shelter tours that we have, if it'll be helpful.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. I wasn't able to make any of the tours because I trust that the people that were there, like you, could speak to it. My question about these facilities that have a little bit more of a better flow or a little bit more inviting, have a different kind of way of where the public is versus where they're putting them in the kennels and things like that. Did that seem to, do their numbers as far as average days in shelter or their number of adoptions, are they higher than ours with those type of, I guess I want to say lower stress situations for the animals and the owners?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have all the stats yet on that. We've asked for them. So I'll say this, that the Hearst facility in particular, and Fort Worth, were lower in terms of being below their capacity than what we are currently and what we have traditionally been in the last 2 or 3 years. I think, and they attribute some of that, because I questioned that a couple of times in the NRH facility and the Fort Worth facility in particular, about what they felt was the key points to reducing their population. And Fort Worth was actually in pretty good shape when we were there. I think they only had 270 animals and could be up to about 100 more than that in capacity at max. So one of the things that they're able to do is, staff-wise, is they had a team of people, about 8 people, who did nothing all day but try to place animals out of their shelter. So they were contacting rescue groups and SPCA's all over the country, and were trying to place animals. And they said that was very successful, that they were reducing their stay, reducing their population by devoting that much manpower to that. We can do that, and we have done it. I think our staff has done it much better effectively in the last year or so in particular. We have reduced our cat stay less to I think 18 days right now, which is pretty remarkable. Our dog stay about 30 days. And in the current environment with all the owner surrenders, now we're back to capacity on dogs right at the moment, and we have about a waiting list, I think, of 18 or 20 people wanting to surrender their dogs right now. And that's kind of a sign of the times. But our staff is doing a really good job of working with the rescue groups and in particular Texas SPCA. And we shipped 3 dogs and several cats out to Michigan last week. I mean, so they're doing it on a smaller scale than Fort Worth, but that's one of the biggest things. So
If we can free up their time with a facility that functions a little bit better and is a little bit easier to maintain, and less of their time is being spent on the building and more on the animals, we can get in and out.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think if you have a hospital lobby, or even, you mentioned the rooms off to the side, what if one of them was bigger, almost as an event room? Not a huge event room, but, just even what I'm imagining a birthday party type size room, right? Because like cat cafes, different things like that are real popular, so could you have events where it was a adoption event where, it was specific for those types of things?
That brings up.
Sure, yeah.
And that's what Fort Worth had. One of the good, first of all, Lee, thanks for the summary. I think you're right on, just spot on that, each facility had something different to offer. There were pros and cons for each facility. I was, personally, I was a little bit surprised at North Richland Hills because they seem to be and I know we're in a public meeting, so North Richland Hills, I apologize up front. But there was a lot of clutter. And I don't mean that negative, I just mean there was a lot of clutter. They had even actually closed the entry door to Surrender Pets. So the benefit of the tour, at least I thought, is, okay, we could see what they did wrong. You know, we could see the good things and the bad things. There were things about the Hearst facility, I went later, and in the Fort Worth facility, I liked both of them. I thought Hearst had a little bit of edge over the visitation, but to Amanda's point, the Fort Worth, the first building, to bring in rescue groups, veterans, because they had veteran cards, you know, that they were using to bring in all kinds of, you could bring in schools, you could bring anything you wanted and have that, you know, those types of facilities there. I thought it was really cool that the cats were in a completely separate building. But from the Fort Worth perspective, and I'm going to ask you this, do we need that medical facility that Fort Worth had?
Oh, no, definitely not
Okay,
anything to that.
Good.
Yeah.
I was really hoping you were going to say that, so thank you. It was huge.
Yeah.
It was an operating room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they
That's
had
cool.
all kinds of different bays.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think they would love to, but they wouldn't be able to get a vet on
Their
staff.
numbers are way bigger than ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but the one, and I don't know if we can include this into design or not, and I get it about the cracks in the floor, but what I really liked about the separate kennels is if they did have an outbreak of anything, they quarantine that kennel and nobody else is impacted. Like our heroic workers at our animal shelter talked about using the pressure washers, and then every dog got sick. You know, they had an outbreak, I don't remember what it was, but it's those kinds of things that they did wrong. But I like the separate facilities, the separate kennels, not separate facilities, because I don't think the visitation center and maybe the cats needs to be separate. But, and we obviously have to have the pull in where the two doors. Yeah, exactly. We obviously have to have that. But the benefit to doing, and I'll call it incremental kennels, is we don't have to build out right now. We could build out partially. If there's a way we could figure out how to put that permanent flooring on those buildings, they each had their own air conditioning and heating. I like that. And it's, I don't know what we're gonna grow out to, 30,000, 35,000, however many people, but to add one of those kennels can't be that expensive. And I like that. I thought that was really good that, you know, even the North Richland Hills facility in Hearst, if they had to expand, that's expensive. And I like that about the Fort Worth facility.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, and I think that layout works real well for Fort Worth with the capacity of animals that they run through there. And we could achieve the same thing under one roof pretty much by having, you know, designated isolation and quarantine areas outside the main kennels and separate air conditioning systems, which again, we don't have now.
Right.
That's kind of what Hearst does, because when you go into their kennel area, when you go back into the adoption room area, and it's big space, and then along that back wall are individual hallways with kennels of maybe 8 to 10 dogs in each one. So I think that would be beneficial to kind of segregate without having separate buildings at the same time. Because they were saying that it was beneficial not only for the anxiety with the dogs, the noise, visitors coming in, you know, you have small children, and there's a lot of noise with, you know, 50 dogs all in one room. It can be very overwhelming. So overwhelming for people and overwhelming for the pets. So I really like the way that Hearst set it up to where you have that one hallway corridor times 4, 5, 6, however many they have. So it
think,
keeps
yeah.
it closed without being in a separate facility, so you're not wasting that time going to and from separate areas.
Yeah, and you'll see on the, when I'll send you the floor plan diagram, I think it's, they have 10, they're in groups of 10, so there'd be like 5 on one side, 5 on this side, and separate hallways with separate doors, separate air conditioning systems, and the whole works, in that. in
Almost
that
like an
dog
airport
facility.
with different terminals.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you
pretty
just
close, yeah.
have
And-
Everything under one roof, but it's not a square building, it's,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, like the North
So-
Richland Hills was kind of a square,
yeah.
and I'm glad we're not recommending North Richland Hills.
Well, yeah, well, yeah, they'll think it's a little older design,
Mm-hmm.
actually, than the others. And, again, it's probably functional, but it did, so in a prior position I was in, you know, we built a brand-new facility, and it ended up being really nice. But from the point you came in to the point that most of the animals were housed was a long way. It was kind of like the other side of the building. So there's all kinds of things that can be gained by, you know, through efficiency of the design of the
Yeah.
building. And I think there's been enough shelters built in the last 5 to 10 years to where there's a lot of good expertise in that area architecturally, and people have got it down a little better.
From a committee, staff, and council perspective on, with respect to the animal shelter, what are the action items going forward? I think we all know we need an animal shelter. So what,
It brings us back to, was it base, and there was like 3 other options?
Yeah, there was a few options. Before we get to that, can I ask one question about the usage of these other buildings that you looked at? Because I think, yeah, so not just from an animal shelter standpoint, but from like a city's like animal services standpoint. Like we had a few months ago, like I think it was free rabies shots or $5 rabies shots or something, and it was at the animal shelter. And if you went out there, it was a line of 400 people standing out there in the heat on pavement with their dogs, and not everybody got seen because it was 1 in, 1 out for that 2-hour period that they had. Are they also utilizing their facilities for similar type things
Ye-
for their public?
I know, NRH and Hearst are. I'm not sure about Fort Worth. I probably so. So reference to those, so, you know, those are sponsored. Generally, we get TCAP to sponsor those for us. And so they provide the shots and whatever. Sometimes we'll offer discounted chips and things like that through them. And so we end up getting probably 40 to 50% of the people that are there are from Saginaw, and then the rest of the other people are from outside the city. But when we advertise them, TCAP wants to kind of guarantee a certain number of people to show up, or they won't come to our facility to do it. So that's why we open it up and allow other people from other cities to come in and take advantage of it. But still, yeah, we're only able to do it out front in the parking lot with the current setup, and which is not really good. Go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
no, I just think, to further that there should be a community, component to it, or there could be, that could really be special. You mentioned, I think someone mentioned schools coming to one of them, whatever. You can think about that. You know, I think it could be, always look at things. from-
Animal services as opposed to just an
Yeah,
animal
always look
shelter,
at things
because I
from
think
a
it's called,
community organizing type perspective, so how can nursing homes get involved, you know, whatever, like how can other people visit different things, but then, to the point of services to, I hope that we consider the community aspect of it.
Yeah, and again, having an inviting facility is gonna be a big plus on that, I think.
My dog had to visit last week for about 3 hours. We were unaware
Well, good. Now, those are good points, and those are all things I think you'd probably be surprised what kind of things would be opened up by, a little better location, or a little better facility anyway. What else? Anything else?
Is there any update on where the facility may be built?
Yes, well, I don't have a lot of really new news for you. We're still in negotiation with a local landowner, which would, the best thing about it would give us an actual street address that's a real street. It would be a little more open. It would still be in the, if we were to make a land swap, it would still be in the industrial area over there between Jarvis and Defile Streets. Which, again, is not ideal, but, we're talking about we don't really have much choice in the city to stay in the city limits in a place where we can not be embedded in a neighborhood and still have, some good access and little visual appeal, and have the amount of acreage that we could afford to build on. So if we were to be able to do this, it would open up, I think, somewhere between 3 to 5 acres for us. And we would probably do it through a 380 agreement, swapping a piece of property that we have that fronts Bailey Boswell with that property, and it would, again, it wouldn't get us out of the industrial area, but Brenda Lane is not really even a real street. The post office reluctantly delivers things there, but it's not a real address, and it's hidden. Even though there's a little sign out front, it's hidden. So this would be not on a main travel portion of a roadway necessarily in terms of like a Bailey Boswell or a Saginaw Boulevard, but not too far off of it and a lot easier to get to and find. I think we've kind of eliminated the other pieces of city property that we've got. One of them is kind of now boxed in and has some issues with it, but
The one over by Jet Fuel or Fuel City?
Lead factory,
Fuel City?
the lead factory.
Yeah, that's the one, we kind of, so there's property around that used to belong to the school district, has been bought up, and there's some people planning to put in a warehouse over there. And it's, that our piece of property by itself is probably really not, it's about 2 acres. It has some drainage issues and some creek crossing issues, and then it has some chemical mitigation issues. Now, all those can be overcome, but Gabe and I have had this conversation just recently, like today, about what to do with that property, and it's really just, it's not ideal. And again, that would be, we would have to have an easement probably to have access to it, and again, not any more visible than what we could end up with in the industrial area over there.
What part of Bailey Boswell would y'all be swapping with?
We own 1.21 acres right up front, on road frontage on Bailey Boswell. It's where that open acreage there, where the water tower sits on Jarvis, and they store pipe, some of the steel pipe and stuff. We own the kind of one corner of that up in the front. Not big enough for us to build a new shelter on. We'd have to add, some acreage to that, and I don't think that the landowner is interested in selling us anything. He'd rather have that road frontage property that we own and swap us something else. So hopefully we'll get that squared away and have something to bring back to you next time.
Lee, is
look a
5
little more
acre,
detail.
is 3 to, you said and if you can't answer us, this is okay, but you said the property would be 3 to 5 acres that we would get?
Yes, that's,
Is that enough?
that's exact, the range that was
Okay.
recommended for us by the
Great.
architect's assessment. Yeah. So, you know, again, the more the better, but, you know, depend on, you know, would give us some more rec yard usage and things like that.
Yeah.
But
The lady that we, well, 2 questions, is the lady that the consultant that we brought in, did we have to pay her, or was that? We did pay her to do that
yes,
study?
yes, we paid her for the needs assessment.
Do you remember offhand how much we paid her to do that?
I should have brought that with me. The overall budget, I think, we budgeted like $18,000 or $20,000 to do that. It was less than that, though. It was somewhere around 14,
Okay.
I think.
So I guess a question for the committee members that I would ask is, and we'd have to go to council to see if they would do this. Is it worth getting another set of eyes to look at? And the reason I'm asking that is if we get another set of eyes to look at it, they come in the exact same price, fine, let's move forward. But in my mind, of all the things we've looked at so far, and I'm sorry, Park Board, this is the most important, the animal shelter. I think it's the most important thing. We've got to get this passed. So if somebody came in,
And it's got to be right.
pardon me?
It's got to be right.
Yeah.
It's got to be passed. and it's gotta be
Exactly.
right.
But, and I'm not saying, but that seems like a small number to invest to get one more set of eyes to look at. I'm just throwing out there to the committee because,
So as far as the needs assessment, the needs wouldn't change, right? Like if you had another person come in, not too much, right, as far as
Right.
the needs assessment, but if
I
you
would
wanted-
hope not.
Right, but you would, if you're saying you would want someone to connect, well, what could also be in there based on what we like from Hearst or who, that may be more beneficial.
Exactly, and I'm not saying I'm not implying there's anything wrong with what she did. I just believe in competitive bidding, and maybe a different set of eyes.
And you know, the design, all that hasn't been done yet, but I think, once you know, now that y'all have seen what you like and what you think is gonna serve the community the best, maybe now asking what those costs are. And we could know from Hearst, it sounds like they're very similar to us in their needs. You know, how much it costs and all that 20-30 business percent increase.
I would be open to that purely based off the fact that whenever we looked at the tiers of the basic and the, you know, the enhanced or whatever the terminology was for the different types of facilities we could get, there was about $1 million and a half $1 million difference between there. We've got a number of other things that we discussed tonight that are $1 million to $1.5 million, and if it's, you know, if we can get something where one of those things becomes possible because a second opinion comes back.
I'm
stating that
just
we
throwing it
can
out there,
do
y'all.
I'm
that-
not
that's
sure
just-
if a needs assessment
It's not,
would
it's not.
have to be done again.
I don't- yeah.
I think you bid out
Like
different
construction.
designs.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think you
I
bid
agree.
out different designs.
construction bids that you would want to get multiple,
Is
but
that-
not necessarily the needs assessment.
Mr. Russell, that's what you're recommending?
Well, yeah, so, you know, based that this lady has worked with PGAL, I mean, she's kind of got my vote. But I'm trying to be open-minded about, okay, what would somebody else say?
I mean, we have the current needs assessment plus feedback of our people on the ground that are in the facility, the animal shelter right now, that are working it with really great tips and tricks and all of that. We went and we already toured 3 separate facilities don't know if it would be worth spending another $14,000, $15,000, $16,000 for another needs assessment. I feel like, I understand you want some options, but.
Even
that
if it
falls
saved you
under the
500,000?
construction aspect of it, with building materials, the cost, the layout, I feel like that is more construction-wise, when we do push this through and decide, that would be step 2.
But we're budgeting a bond proposal, and if we put something out there that's at the high end and it doesn't pass, as opposed to getting another look, and if it's $14,000 for someone to come in and say, we can give you everything you want, and we've done this before, and it's $10 million.
But that's not a needs assessment.
Yeah, that's different, that would be.
You know,
the
what
construction.
might be nice though, like based on what y'all saw at Hearst, I keep saying y'all because I wasn't able to go, but so if Hearst is kind of the overall consensus, it seems like you would then get a couple different designers to say, we could do this for you, and before we go up for bond, you know, and say, this is more of what our budget would look like.
Yeah, I think the designers are expensive though, right?
Well, I mean, you could, you know, we're not going into contract with them,
Well-
but I think they could even,
Not for them to give a bid
right.
versus them doing the whole project.
Right.
Yeah, so let me just remind you again what we received from the needs assessment from Heather Lewis with Animal Arts. So she gave us 5 options. And those ranged from 12 million to 16.25 million within 5 options. The main difference between those 5 options is the type of construction. It was the same, based on the same square footage, basically the same facility type, you know, rooms and kennels on the inside, and that included hard and soft costs through those 5 options. So a $4.25 million difference in those 5 options, but otherwise pretty much everything the same except for the type of construction. So, I mean, if you wanted us to look at, I'm sure we could do another, you know, square footage update on what the going cost of square footage would be, and estimate some of these types of buildings based on an updated square footage. I mean, again, I think, you know, we know that the cost of things has gone up. But there again, there may be some cost savings that we could come up with. But, yeah, I mean, you know, of course, it's up to the committee what y'all want to try to do.
Lee,
Yes, ma'am.
could we just get Heather to give us an update on what she thinks the cost is? We also have to remember, this is her estimate of what it's cost. She's not gonna be the one building it. We're still gonna have to go out to bids to have this done.
That's quite true, and I have communicated with her since we've started meeting, and she confirmed, you know, her 5% per year increase as a benchmark. And again, that's on a 2023 estimate that she did the needs assessment on. So I don't think it's going to change a whole lot, but there could be some advances in some of the building materials and things that could change that cost a little bit. But certainly, I think I can get a more, you know, I can get a harder estimate from her and other people. The only problem is that, you know, again, when it comes down to the actual design of each square foot of the building, all we would still have is just an estimate before that, you know. So the architectural design would come up, you know, I'm sure would come up with the same range, basically, probably a very similar range of costs, but
I hear what you're saying, Rick, as far as like, once you said that, I thought about the PowerPoint from last time, that there were the 5 different options. And so are those 5 options still the best? Because I think number 3 was recommended or something, whichever one was recommended. Even asking Heather now, 2 years later, and the more design work you've done and what you've seen, needs assessment, do you still recommend this type of material, this type of whatever? Or, I see the point of just making sure before we propose, but,
And we liked the Hearst facility, but they did do a lot of value engineering on their facility. So, certainly, those things can be factored in. But yeah, the value option 3, I think, was the one that she recommended, and that was 14.25 to 14.75 million. So add another 10-15% to that, and it would be pretty close to being updated square footage cost. But we'll do whatever y'all advise.
How much was the senior center and library how much was that bond?
About the same, I think.
Yeah, it was about $25 million. That included architectural and construction costs. There was a few things that went up that we just couldn't help, and it's going to be a little bit higher than what the bond is, but we are throwing some ARPA money at it as well.
I'm just
Make that
looking at the cost for the tax, like, what is okay for the taxpayer? Like, they're okay with voting in this much money for the senior center and library? Are they gonna be okay with this much money for the animal shelter? For me, that would be yes. Well, and with the difference, $1 million difference, 16, 17,000, make it a big deal? I don't think so. So,
I agree with you. I think it's a combination of all of them. Which, we need the parks. We need, good grief, I drive down McElroy every day, and we need McElroy
So-
fixed,
sorry.
but, yeah.
I have to drive on it every day too.
It's,
live on it.
but to your point, they're gonna look at the total price tag.
see, I think
Of
there-
all the bonds we request.
But I think too, who's watching this? The community is ignorant, as far as what that means for them, right? So you're looking at 17 million, there needs to be some, we know from the Saginaw High School, all that stuff that went down with the last bond, they need to know how that actually impacts them. I think there could be a ton of education around, okay, 17 million sounds scary, but only really impacts you this much. I think we could do a lot more around that helps them understand why their buy-in is
Well,
important.
in that aspect, the number of voters that are gonna vote on this,
Right.
I think last time was only 1,500.
Right,
So you only have to convince
right,
700
751.
people to vote yes.
right.
So one thing I would add, for our next meeting, we would ask you to start kind of prioritizing the list. And the recommendation for the last bond in '21, or that went to voters in '21, was $100 million. Of course, the council didn't choose all those projects. In fact, they reduced the amount recommended for the senior center because there was some sticker shock. Whatever y'all recommend, I think it would be helpful to say, this is what we're recommending to bring to voters, whatever that number is. We can very easily find the number of, the cost on a project basis so that people know. And then those projects that don't make it, then, we can include that or that be prioritized, so.
So
And
that-
We can
that's,
also break it up into phases as well, right?
I don't know.
Phases of construction and stuff like that, so it's not like.
I don't know.
Is
I
this
don't
gonna
know
be one single bond voted on, or like 3 separate ones?
So I think that, we've presented the projects kind of by project area, right? And so I think it makes sense to consider projects from each of those areas.
so another ABC.
I think the difference between the streets and parks and sidewalks and this is I don't know if we can phase out, or I don't know if we can do phases for the animal shelter.
Yeah.
I think it's an all-in.
You do it or no, yeah.
Yeah, and that price tag, to Mr. Russell's point, is gonna be high, and it's gonna take convincing to say,
We also need
yes.
Yeah.
So,
Because if we come to it with $17 million, $18 million for the animal shelter, and a $3 million project for road, and a $2 million project for sidewalks and things like that, and somebody gets scared off, they're gonna vote in all these other things that aren't as high a priority because we didn't get the number right.
And not
Yeah.
even that, whether it impacts them or not, right?
Right.
That's a huge thing that happened last time, at least from the outside looking in.
How much of our taxes gonna be raised?
How much has
Yeah,
been
you're always
impacting,
gonna
but
have that,
also,
yeah.
I don't know anyone who goes to Saginaw High School, so I don't care, I'm voting it down. Whatever, take whatever example for, what we're talking about. So if a ton of people vote that day who could care less about dogs and cats, I don't know, so I just think like how we market it.
Yeah, so, and that's a good point. So the committee makes a recommendation, the city council reviews, and then, let's say the city council says, okay, these are the propositions, then the informational process begins. So we likely would have some town hall meetings, we would send out informational mailers, which has been done in the past, so that people can say, okay, if I vote for A, it's gonna cost me this amount, if I vote for B, what have you, so that's a good point.
so again, I'm going to throw something out to my fellow committee members. The previous bond committee, the council gave us a dollar limit and said, spend it. And we did.
Yeah, prioritize
So
100 million, and
what-
the council took the
So
67.
my suggestion to the committee and if they agree, my ask to you is, go back and have the council give us a dollar number.
Do we wanna just shoot for the moon and let them pare it down though? I don't know.
They may not, they may not,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they may not pare it down, and so, I don't know,
because they'll say the bond committee said this much, so we're.
let's do it, yeah.
You
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean-
I see both sides
You always
of it.
ask for more, and then they will whittle it down.
Well,
You
and
have
and
to
I think,
remember, sorry, I was gonna say, remember, call back to the last meeting, anything we issue between now and 2034,
yeah, it raises the
it's
tax
going to
rate.
raise the tax rate, anything between now and 2024.
Well, I thought we had 2 years, that there was some debt being paid off in 2 years.
There is gonna
Yes.
be debt dropping off.
A little, yeah, 20, was it? Yeah.
I don't know
that's
how
right.
much,
Yeah.
but there was some being, do you know how much offhand?
I don't.
But,
So,
But we can't wait until 2034 for,
no, absolutely not. I agree. I just, what I feel the difference between this committee and the last committee is we had a checkbook.
right,
And it was easier in the last couple of meetings, probably 3 meetings, to then prioritize and get inside the checkbook. And it was really easy because once you took the fire station off, oh my gosh, it got really easy with the committee. Because we knew the council wasn't gonna go for 150 million.
so I think the council is looking to the committee and all councils in every city. They're trying to get a pulse of the community. So I would say maybe follow the same approach, the 100 million. That doesn't mean that voters would take that and then prioritize from there. But I would rank order it like was done in the last letter.
Okay?
Yeah, that would be my thoughts.
Okay?
And then, so just to follow up, but.
They just gave us that 100 million. That's
Yeah, they just, and that was an arbitrary
Yeah,
number.
okay.
That Patrick Farr said, well, what about 100 million?
Okay.
Well, it could have very easily been 150 million, but that was, even number and.
Then that's, and again, this is, I'm not stating this, I'm just advertising. Then I think that's what we do with everything we've seen so far, is now we just prioritize.
So, kind of a question, what, the debt to revenue ratio,
Right.
what's the maximum comfortable level that the city can handle?
So the answer, and this, I think Rick asked this related to our bond rating. The answer is it depends on each city. And it also depends on how old the age of a city. So think of a city like Frisco, generally pretty new. They're not issuing a lot of new debt. Well, I take it they are for other projects. I have some friends that work there. But, you know, your infrastructure and new development, it doesn't need to be rehabbed. So contrast that with a Plano. So they had a huge, I think the biggest bond in the city's history a couple years ago. They've got to rebuild streets that are 25 and 30.
City's almost doubled in size.
Correct, yeah. So when voters approve a bond that are backed by general obligation bonds, especially in this circumstance, we're saying we're paying, the tax rate will pay for this. So there's no magic formula of what's too much. It's ultimately what is politically feasible and a practical matter too. You know, another consideration too, let's say the committee, we've kind of framed it as we want to deliver projects in 5 years, which we're well on track for that with the 21 bond, because people have short memory between voting and delivering projects, and we want to be able to, you know, work through what's been approved. So I don't have an answer for you other than it's just kind of a judgment call. And
So that kind of leads to, she mentioned, I think it was about $1,260 per household that pays towards the taxes and trying to maintain that number.
right, that's our total tax bill. I think and I'll send this to you all, but
So with what's getting paid off, in theory, that would be reduced.
reduce, you're correct.
So what number bond can we do to maintain that?
Yeah.
And if what number goes above it,
Yeah.
that would be comfortable to residents?
Yep. I can get you that information. Off the top of my head, I think that if you recall $50 million, and maybe you all remember, if we were to do 50 million over 5 years, the average household would see once all that debt was issued. Now, if voters approve, we don't issue it all at once. We do it project by project, so it's kind of a buildup. Would be $200 a household? 230? Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
The price per $100 value was about a little over 20%.
Right. So, you know,
Increase.
and that was on $50 million a project, so.
Yes. Now, and the debt that's being paid off in 2 years, is that the bridge?
So, let
Actually,
me
yeah, I
think.
heard that was already paid off.
Oh,
Well, so I can get you that off the top of my head, but debt falls off each year based on the schedule. So I couldn't tell you. The Bailey Boswell, that phase, which was the roadway and the bridge, I think was approved by voters in 13.
Okay.
So that would put it at
33.
10, 12 years in. So that
And
could,
it's a-
yeah, I could
It's a
find out from
20-year
Kim.
20-year bond?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. But and I think that's right, in 2 years, we don't have capacity for 2 or 3 years till we have debt falling off. So the way that would work is, let's say voters approved, and 3 years from now, we would have X amount, say $3 million, to issue within our existing tax rate. This was a scenario we were in with the fire station, if you'll recall. So we were able to issue bonds that didn't require voter approval within our existing tax rate, because everybody acknowledged that we've got to take care of it, so.
So, kind of switching, does anybody else have any questions on the finances? Because I'm going to really change gears. So, Lee, I think you said that if the bond is approved in May, if we go for it in May, it'd probably be 2 years before we issued any bonds.
So, yeah, I think we'd issue bonds for design in this
Sure.
year.
Yeah.
But the construction dollars, yeah,
Yeah.
it,
So,
yeah.
I know, Lord knows I know about the thing across the street, so I know construction doesn't happen overnight. But I can't believe I'm going to say this. What would it cost us to accelerate the animal shelter? The timeline? You said the health department could shut us down any day. What do we do if that happens?
So that would actually, the design phase would have to be accelerated.
Yeah. I mean, if,
So could the
the whole
city
thing.
issue a bond for the design phase?
we would, yeah. So if voters approve, design would be
So
paid
as-
from
as
bond.
voters- As soon as voters approve it, the city would issue a bond through the city
Yep.
for the design phase.
So in that scenario, if you think of schools, when schools have capacity issues, we probably would look at some short-term
Okay,
temporary portables.
okay.
If the health department said no. Now, I think we'd have a good story to say, hey, we've got a plan,
We've
we're
got a
working on
plan,
it. Voters, yeah.
We've got it moving forward, good.
How much of that would depend on us getting the land swap?
So I'm pretty confident in it's in process. It's just sort of,
And was there a dollar amount said to purchase that land without a swap?
no, but we're getting the appraisal. So I can't tell you right now, but I think within a month or so, we should be able to know what the value of the frontage is versus let's say the back parcel. But the property owner thankfully is in no hurry and is agreeable to the city, so. And it doesn't have, to the point earlier, it doesn't have lead and unknown environmental issues, so.
And Lee, this is again thinking out in left field, but I asked you the question about, we'd been outsourcing different services in the city. And you said it'd probably take a couple of years to get an agreement, like with Fort Worth. Instead of buying portables, or hopefully the health department would let us continue, should we look at an agreement with Fort Worth for temporary services if we needed them? Or is it even worth the effort? I mean, I don't know, I'm just asking.
So we briefly talked about that when we were touring Fort Worth, the Fort Worth facility, and it's not out of the question.
Good.
But they're not, it's kind of it's coin toss right now, as to whether they would be interested in doing it.
Okay.
So for our next meeting, and, I gave, my packet back to that guy, but for the next meeting, do we go through that packet and literally, is it by section, the 3 sections y'all presented them prioritized, or
So,
prioritized by? the 3?
So I think we'll follow the template for the last committee, which is, let's say, 100 million total projects, and then prioritize them by the priority of the committee, irregardless of project type.
Well, but what I mean is, so all those little, phase 1, phase 2,
Sure.
all those things, or are those prioritized, or are we saying, altogether parks first, or whatever? Does that make sense?
No,
Yeah.
Each individual item.
Yeah, I think it would have to be, but we have to match them up in conjunction, because, like Adele mentioned, we've got street projects for Park Center,
Right,
right? We also have, William Houston Park on there,
right.
right? So do we prioritize those in the same section of the priority list, because those things would go in conjunction with each other?
Yeah, or like that sidewalk you mentioned.
And there has to
Yeah,
be some
yeah,
cost savings there too.
okay.
You would have to think, and there are certainly some things, with parks, because parks aren't nice to have, and there are certainly some crucial things with roads and with, the animal shelter that obviously will take top priority. One of those is gonna work in there, and there's gonna probably be something from parks that doesn't make it. And that's fine, because we've got a huge, these were 4 projects from the parks out of probably over a dozen things that are on the master plan.
Yeah,
So that's not gonna hurt our feelings if we don't get all of them.
that's good.
Yeah, so that'll be be thinking about that. We'll get information out to you. So we'll have a January meeting. I think we would have enough time potentially to have an early February meeting. The hard deadline, the council has to call an election by, I believe it was February 13th or 14th. They can do that at a special meeting, but that's when we need the
Finalization.
the propositions and the final dollar amounts, so.
In preparation for the next meeting, can we get, you don't have a whiteboard in here, do you? So the last committee, the bond committee was really easy because we took the items, I'll call them the line items. We took the line items, and as we went around the room, it was clear. The library and the senior center were right up there. Well, fire station was first, but they took that away. So that we can use some Post-its.
Yeah.
Put them on the whiteboard, rearrange them, talk about them, and that just made it easy to, I mean.
Visually see the
Thank you,
full plan.
yes, thank you, yeah.
So I think what we could do too is put all the projects in an Excel spreadsheet and send that out, and then everybody, maybe if they like,
And then if y'all have those huge.
and then when
Just-
we meet, yeah,
Have the whiteboard, because we will move
Yeah.
it around a million times.
agree, yeah.
And so how we do it sometimes is like the big, white Post-it papers.
Yeah, we can get that.
Put them up, and then each of y'all have a Post-it note that has a 4 for animal shelter, as far as priority, the numbering it that way, so we see, oh, it looks like most people have this as a last, right, to start, so if visual works, I think I have some of that stuff I can bring.
Yeah. Can definitely do that.
And I'm sorry, Lee, I'm gonna give you an action item. You can take it or not, it doesn't matter. But could you really emphasize that we need people here at the January meeting? And what day is it gonna be in January again?
January 6th, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this was unusual. We had a couple of vacations. I expect better.
Okay.
Yeah, I know a number of people at
attendance.
the last meeting said like, I can't make it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, I expect
We
we'll have
really
better.
need them here.
Agree, yeah.
And if you need me to reply all, I'll be happy to.
No one needs that ever.
All right, we good for now? All right, thank you all.